Testing, testing, testing. The following has been a message brought to you by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Melissa, count to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, Dominic, are we live?
We are live. Just waiting for stream.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
It's a 30-second delay, so stream's gonna catch up right
Tap to. Hey, what is PCX 600? Is that you? It must be. I'm just going to allow it and hope I'm not. Well,
now. Alright, there you are. You're good. You're on screen now.
am I?
Yep. If you look at
Where?
your stream, there you go. It's 30 seconds.
Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, let's go. Let's do it. Let me prepare myself mentally. All right, it's a whiskey kind of day. It's Friday. I'm going to try out this new one, Blackened.
You don't put ice on it?
No, we drink whiskey neat over here, miss.
Melissa, talk.
Hello.
Again.
Hey, could you all hear us on the stream? How's the sound? How's the sound grabbing you? As you can tell, we're really not used to this live business, but it's how we chose to do it today.
Yeah, bear with us, please.
Hey, Melissa, what's in your cup? Starbucks? Melissa
even
doesn't.
know.
She doesn't drink
No.
around me.
Hell no.
Can't hear anyone at all now. Hey, Dominic, you're fucking up. Edit that part out.
I think the last time I was drinking while I was in this building, it's because somebody put tequila in my coffee.
Oh, it's all good now? I think it's all good now.
All right.
I hope y'all didn't hear me curse. Okay. Testing. How's the sound levels, Dominic? Are we in the red? No, I'm good.
You're good.
Melissa, are you good?
Can you hear me?
Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah, she's good.
All right. Okay. Let me get my beverages assorted. Dominic, I think this one is you. That's the sound of
ASMR.
should I?
What?
I was not going to go that route.
Sir?
All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a rough week. I've been in trial. I just did closing arguments myself yesterday, so I'm appropriately mindseted in for the trial recap of Karen Reed today. Welcome to this edition of the Tilted Lawyer podcast. I'm your host, Omar Serrata, joined by Melissa Pacheco, who will forever be known as Nicole Kessinger
You still can't let that go.
White. No. It was my favorite interaction with you ever because I got to make you cry. We have Dominic, who is enjoying a beverage that I'm not going to comment on. It's a whiskey kind of day. They've been going for a couple of weeks now on the Karen Reed case. I haven't had an opportunity to watch all those days of trial, but I have been able to catch up on the recaps. And so here's what I think so far about what's going on. I commented before the case that I thought the defense team was rock stars. They are putting on, it's not a perfect case. There's been some criticism over them maybe over sensationalizing some of the evidence. For example, they used yearbook photos to try to prove that there was perjury in this case. Some commented that the prosecution should have objected, and yeah, they should have. But from right now, here's my theory of trial. Everything in trial, you have to put it in stages. There's a middle stage, and for the middle stage, you put in all the middle bits. But what you have at the bookends of that is he has primacy and recency. You got to start strong. You got to finish strong, because that's what people are going to remember. You have your initial impressions, and you have your lasting impressions from the closing. And that's what people remember. That's what jurors are going to remember. They seldom remember the middle stuff. And I say that only because the prosecution had to come in and basically wow the jury with something. And from what I've seen through 9-10 days of trial now, it's been extremely underwhelming. And Melissa's here for emotional support. She doesn't have any legal expertise. I didn't bring her in for her legal analysis. She's here to provide layperson commentary whenever appropriate, maybe add some levity to the podcast. And then, of course, Dominic is here to make sure that we're all sounding good. Don't ever know who she is, LOL. Oh, don't even know who she is. I'm not sure who we're talking about, Pokey. So we're doing this broadcast live. We've never done this before.
Yes, we did.
Well, we did a couple weeks, just you and I,
See?
without Dominic. And we did the best we can. We did our level best. Now we're going to give Dominic a crack and see if he can make it sound even better or worse. I don't know. It's possible. So, all right, let's jump right into Karen Reed. If you're unfamiliar with the story, just to give you a brief rundown, Karen Reed was drinking with her boyfriend, Mr. O'Keefe. They went to a bar. They were out with friends. They were bar hopping. When myself and Ileana had initially visited this case, there was some speculation that she may have had, according to what was out there, the equivalent of maybe a 0.25 BAC. If she had 8 to 9 drinks that night of a clear liquid, a clear substance, maybe it was a mixed drink, and the testimonies kind of borne that out. But she was clearly intoxicated. The theory that the prosecution wants you to believe is that there was an occasion later that night where Karen Reed ran over Mr. O'Keefe with her car, leaving him for dead in the elements, where he either died from blunt force trauma or he died of the elements. Either way, Karen Reed was responsible for the murders, and that's their theory of the case. There was an argument, she was pissed off, and whether or not she did it on purpose, she ran him over and just left, and then there was all this craziness going on. And 4 or 5 in the morning, Karen Reed is like, where is my boyfriend? And the way that her defense is presenting it is that she was framed. So if we go to the opening statements, when they did their opening statements, this is what it was. So Ms. Reed, she pleads not guilty to second-degree murder. Prosecution says she hit her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her vehicle outside of a home in Canton during a snowstorm on January 29th, 2022. The defense, in their opening statement, their theory of the case is essentially that she was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death, and that means that somebody else did it. And, it's not their responsibility to do this, but the defense never offered an alternative of who killed Mr. O'Keefe. Their theory of the case is that perhaps John O'Keefe found his way into the house that they were visiting, walked up and down 3 flights of stairs in the house, and was assaulted by the people that were in there, or somebody inside of the house. They don't know specifically who, but he had beef with the officers in there, and they beat him up and stuck him outside and left him for dead and tried to get Karen Reed to take the fall. Now, normally when I hear a story like that, I mean, isn't it true that that's basically the story of every defendant who's ever stood trial and fought for their freedom? Oh, it wasn't me. I know that there's evidence against me, but I was framed. It was planted. Well, the deeper that you got into this case, it's not completely bullshit to think. Dominic, edit that out. It's not completely BS to think that that she may have been framed. The defense in their pleadings and some of their pretrial motions have alluded to the fact that this is a department-wide conspiracy. Certain people were fond of other people, were protecting other people, and this whole web of lies ensued, which resulted in faulty investigation, planted evidence, people hiding text messages, people doing all kinds of stuff. And the closer you got into it was, hey, perhaps Karen was not responsible for this. And I did a couple of videos on this case prior to trial starting. And I simply stated, we got to wait to see how this evidence is going to come out. Because if what the defense is saying is true, then the prosecution has a lot of holes that they have to fill. And I kind of reserved my judgment as far as whether I believed Miss Reed is guilty or not, because I wanted to see how the evidence is played out. But I got to say, if you're grading the trial performance of the prosecution, right now they're probably like at a D+. But I say that they're probably fine. The problem is the defense team of Miss Reed is doing an astoundingly good job of poking holes in all of the state's witnesses and raising reasonable doubt.
What state is this, Omar?
Oh, we are in Boston,
Okay,
Mass.
Massachusetts.
Yes. The Commonwealth, if you will. And so all of the witnesses so far have been assaulted by the defense attorney's cross-examination. And I'm not impressed so far with the prosecution's case. I got to say that. And if you believe in primacy and recency, and that's the way as lawyers we're taught to present trial, and I've just finished a trial yesterday, and so I'm kind of very much of that mode, the prosecution right now has fallen flat. Just glancing at the landscape of everybody that's paying attention to this case. What is Pokey on about? She says, where am I? Who am I? Who's my boyfriend?
What?
I'm going home as soon as I find out who I don't know what Pokey is on. But
That's a first one?
she's raising a ruckus in the comments. What's up, Jenny from Colorado? Lulu, of course. I think she might be our #1 fan from Detroit, Michigan. She was
One of my best friends lives in Michigan.
I've been to Michigan for, back in the 90s for a wrestling tournament.
When you were living in Ohio? Or before that?
I think I just moved.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So let's recap the first day of evidence. So the first person to jump on the stand, or I'm not going to do these in order. I'm just going to basically run through the list of witnesses and what they had to say. So Stephen Seraph testified about the scene, about the footprints, about Reed's behavior at the location. His testimony basically described a situation that when he arrived at the scene on Fairview Road in Canton, he mentioned that, of course, snowy conditions, that's been pretty well known, the presence of individuals, including Reed and O'Keefe. He testified about Reed's behavior, testified about observing Karen Reed giving CPR to O'Keefe upon his arrival. He described her as being visibly upset, stating that she expressed guilt and distress, claiming responsibility for the situation. He talked about there were footprints and track marks, noting the presence of footprints and track marks around O'Keefe's body, but mentioned that none of them were leading from the residence. This detail kind of suggests movement around the body, but not a direct connection with the house. That's why it was important for the prosecution to get that in. Seraph, I'm not sure if you pronounce the name Seraph or Seraph, but he mentioned that there were interactions with other women present at the scene who provided information about the circumstances leading up to O'Keefe's condition, including drinking at bars downtown. He described O'Keefe's state upon his arrival indicating that he couldn't find a pulse. O'Keefe was cold to the touch and appeared to have injuries consistent with a serious incident. Now, we've talked about the injuries that Mr. O'Keefe had, whether or not they were consistent with being hit by a car and left for dead in the snow. And that was one of the most problematic things for the prosecution's case, because it kind of looked like the guy, if you believe what the defense was saying, had been in a fight. I forget specifically what the injuries were, but there was claw marks on his arm, like he'd been attacked by a dog. Was one of the theories. He looked like he had been in a fight. He had bruising on his knuckles. They were careful to mention that one of the individuals in the house was a trained boxer, and that he was maybe assaulted by 2 or 3 people, including a dog. But his injuries, there's no way that you get the injuries that they knew of that he had sustained by being hit by a car. And so that was one of the holes that the prosecution had to kind of fix. So there they are. Mr. Srav gets on there and he says that. Erin O'Keefe, who is John O'Keefe's sister-in-law, was there to talk about, give insights into relationships, arguments, and the events leading up to O'Keefe's death. Now, this is very important. So, to what degree, I don't know. Second degree, I don't think that anybody really believes that Karen Reed, if she was guilty, intended to do what she is alleged to have done. I don't think anybody believes that she purposely ran him over. The narrative that the prosecution is basically running with is, yeah, maybe she didn't try to kill him, but she was being reckless and she ran him over, and maybe she didn't know she did, or maybe she did and just kind of forgot. But they go through a great deal of trouble to talk about the relationship dynamics, specifically Erin O'Keefe. So she described the relationship between Karen and John. She detailed how Reed had spent time at O'Keefe's house, mentioned their interactions during trips and daily routines, family arrangements. She had discussed that that John O'Keefe was the legal guardian of his niece and nephew after their parents had passed away. She highlighted that family dynamic, including interactions with Karen and their living arrangements. She described interactions with Karen. She provided accounts of Karen's presence in their lives, discussing issues and occasional disputes between Reed and John. And I think that what she was basically alluding to was the fact that John was spending so much time raising these kids that it kind of took away from her relationship with John. If there was anything that was negative that came out of that testimony, that would have been the one thing. She talked about the days leading up to John's death, including trips, arguments that have occurred between Karen and John. She offered a perspective on Reed's behavior, helping to paint a picture that maybe it wasn't, exactly paradise in their relationship. And that was it. She was basically a nothing witness. Lulu says it looked staged, the crime scene. Yeah, 100% agree. Jen H, she's talking about the Apple Watch stuff, is what makes me think makes me rethink everything at this point. You mentioned in a previous show, will this be? Oh yeah, that's going to come in, Jen, for sure. If it hasn't already, I haven't watched every single day of trial, but there's going to be a discussion about the Apple Watch data, because the prosecution's theory is that John never entered the house. The Apple Watch data seems to say that not only did he go into the house, but he was running up and down the stairs through 3 flights of stairs.
Oh, the steps.
Yeah. Prosecutors are going to have to address that at some point, because the defense is 100% going to bring that up.
Of course.
Yeah. So Paul, John's younger brother, gets on the stand. He talks about, again, he's just talking about interactions between himself, Karen, plans before the incident, his description of the scene. He talks about the relationship between Karen and his brother. He shared insights about how they met, their interactions, blah, blah, blah. Most importantly, he talked about leading up to the incident. Paul, basically describing interactions between Karen and John, including arguments over finances, disagreements over child rearing practices, all normal stuff. Nothing too insignificant. Nothing that you would run over a guy for. Again, I'm a little confused as to why the prosecution is focusing in on this. if they're not charging her with first-degree murder. All they have to prove is that she accidentally ran him over. Well, I guess it's kind of true. I understand. So, all right, I'm correcting myself. Normally when we're not doing a live show, I would tell Dominic, editing moment. So the fact she's charged with second-degree murder, the distinction is that she purposely killed John. That's why they're bringing up the relationship dynamics. They're trying to say that maybe in a fit of rage, whether or not it was logical for her to do it or not.
Although it was premeditated? That's what you're trying to
No,
tell me?
premeditated is first degree. Second degree is spur of the moment. I get so pissed off.
I get what you're saying.
Like you walk in on your husband sleeping with a maid or something, and then in a fit of rage, you pick up
a knife,
a lead pipe, or whatever weapon of choice, and
you do something.
Act in the heat of the moment. That's a second degree murder. So what they're trying to paint this as is Karen was so pissed off because of all of this stuff building up that she floored it in reverse and ran him over and just gone, right? The underlying charge of that would be an unintentional homicide or negligent homicide or reckless homicide, just kind of more or less what this looks like without more, because the testimony that's come out does not lend itself to, oh, she was definitely, because he's raising these kids, taking away time from the relationship. That's definitely an intentional act. There's nothing so far that leads me to believe that specifically. Miss Dark Humor, I love the name. Is the defense going to bring in their own? Oh, of course they are. Their own witnesses, and are they some of the ones that have already testified? No, they're probably not going to bring in anybody that testifies for the prosecution because they're cross-examining them.
Did they already say how long are they going to take for
This
trial?
is probably a 2-month trial, 6 weeks. So we should talk about the judge in this case. So, Melissa.
You did a background on the judge?
No, I've observed her during some of the pretrial motions.
Okay.
She is like one of my least favorite kinds of judges. So I don't know your experience with judges, but I've been practicing for 10 years. This is more an apt question for Ileana, who's ill with her child, probably has pink eye or something. But she is, hey, it's a thing. You got kids.
I didn't say anything.
This judge seems to not want to be bothered with the defense's motions. So there's been dozens of motions that have been filed in this case. And there has been some talk about whether or not maybe we should change judges, because the judge seems to be really pissed off at the defense because of all the stuff they keep on bringing up. Like, for example, one of the pretrial motions was they wanted to change the courtroom because it was a violation of his constitutional rights that he couldn't get a proper angle of the witness and, the confrontation clause and all those kinds of things. The legal aspects of it are not important. But it was a legitimate point that the defense brought up, and the judge just looked so irritated at her. And normally when we see these high-profile judges, you don't see judges react like that. I could think of a couple of examples, like the Parkland case, that one judge that yelled at the public defender.
Parkland case was the one in Florida?
Yeah, it was a Florida case. It was at the sentencing hearing. But before I get too off track, most judges in these high-profile cases that are televised, that are subject of national scrutiny, are on their best behavior. So if this judge is acting like this now, under this spotlight, imagine what she would be like practicing in just like regular, everyday practice. And so she is something to be reckoned with in this case.
Of course she had to be a woman. And I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Well, there's literally no distinction between men and women when it comes to judges. I don't know if I would say that male judges are more impulsive than female judges, or more apt to displays of anger. I've honestly seen an equal amount of both. It's just the power of sitting in that position that causes people to react in stereotypical ways.
From my short experience in front of judges, which has been very limited to none.
Well, you got to testify in the trial that I just did.
Yes.
How was that? Well, that judge was the sweetest judge that there is in San Bernardino. You got off easy with that one.
She is a sweetheart. She smiled at me the entire time. She made me feel so like secure and confident of myself.
Yeah.
But that experience is something I really wish I do not have to repeat, because I was so nervous.
Well, that's what happens. Do you realize that I'm only halfway through day one? Whose bright idea was it to recap 2 weeks of trial on a live stream? All right, I got to get through this somehow. Let's continue. So O'Keefe, he testified about the last communication with his brother, which included plans to meet on a specific day, events that led to the cancellation of their get-together due to inclement weather. The information helps establish a timeline, basically leading up to the incident. And then he talks about after the incident, describing Karen's behavior and presence at the scene. Following, he basically shared that, you know, she was kind of out of it. She was distraught, whatever. He talks about some of the family dynamics. Again, nothing too juicy, which I don't know why you would start with these witnesses. These are middle of the day. This is like 3 week in witnesses. If you got a 6 week presentation, I would introduce these witnesses maybe, you know, week 3, but the prosecution is choosing to do it. I feel like they're just maybe just doing it linear. Like there was no forethought into like a primacy and recency. What's our best points? How do we hit these points? How do we hit the, how are we going to finish? If you're prepping a trial and you've done these before and, you know, like I feel like the defense would not have started with these witnesses, but they did. Here we are. They're just falling flat. They're talking about nothing. They're putting the jury to sleep with these points. Like, okay, so they had a relationship. There was something about the kids and, you know, leading up to it, behavior, whatever, fine. I need somebody to drop a hammer on day 1. Michael Proctor, one of the troopers, made claims about the actions and statements of Karen Reed. So the alleged biases and actions, there was claims made during the trial on investigation that might have indicated that Trooper Proctor had deep ties to certain individuals involved in the case. That was something that was attacked by the defense, because remember what their theory is. They're wanting to prove a conspiracy. They're wanting to prove that the conspiracy is based on personal ties between the parties of this case who may have been responsible that aren't currently charged, and a internal cover-up. And mind you, there was a whole FBI investigation, which you don't know about, I understand. But there was an entire investigation that, to my understanding, is still ongoing, where the FBI made certain conclusions about this case. But one of the things that they were looking for is possible collusion within the police departments, and possible witness tampering, evidence tampering, some of those kinds of things. So when Michael Proctor gets on there, of course, the cross-examination, the defense team is going to try to bury themselves into that theory. They talked about his interaction with the witnesses, potential suspects, individuals connected to the case, any preconceived notions, communications, or actions taken by Proctor that could have been questioned for their impact on the case. They talked about his handling of evidence, if he was involved in the collection, preservation, or handling of evidence. His testimony regarding these aspects is important because when you have one of these cases where claiming somebody was framed, and it's not just with this case, in every criminal defense case ever, the first thing you attack is the investigation. How could you possibly have concluded that my guy is responsible? Why didn't you look at person A, B, or C? When all of this other stuff, did you ask these questions? Did you think to look under the covers? Did you think to do, you know, it's always this. Defense attorneys and law enforcement have this relationship where every time they get on the stand to be questioned in testimony, it's like, hey, why didn't you do your job better? And so that's just the nature of it. And this is really no different in this case. They had talked to various emergency responders, and they just basically tried to establish what they would have done on their arrival. They talked again about Karen's behavior, which is pretty consistent so far. They talked about their initial action, Karen Reed's statements about things that she said, collaboration with law enforcement. Again, they were trying to dive into that, how they handled the scene. And so that was it. That was kind of what they did. What I feel happened in day 1 more than anything else is the defense getting in their theory about, consistent with their opening statement, about this was an internal cover-up, and that there are things that were done in this case that are not consistent with how you would have reacted in any other case. And then we go into day 2. And on day 2, they had talked to Canton Fire Lieutenant Anthony Flamati. He gave testimony about the snowy conditions at the scene, about how Karen Reed was performing chest compressions on the victim when firefighters arrived. They talked to Timothy Nuttall, who talked about the condition of the victim. They talked to Stephen Mullaney, who described the initial scene upon his arrival. And I guess they talked to Steve Seraph again. As far as the snowy conditions, Flamati had mentioned that there were 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground when they received the call. And he emphasized the challenging weather conditions at the time of the incident. So that's kind of a big deal because the snowfall, I've heard a lot of floating theories out there in the case. Some were suggesting that the iPhone was found under like inches of snow. Some are suggesting that it was like found on top of the snow, indicating possible placement of evidence, that kind of a thing. So the conditions of how everything was found is pretty important. So they go into it. They talked about his actions, and she was actively giving, according to Flamati, chest compressions, trying to do CPR on O'Keefe because she was basically distraught. She was acting like a person that did not want her boyfriend to die. Regardless of whether or not they were fighting, regardless of whether or not there was anything going on in the relationship, she was actively trying to save him. You've heard Karen Reed in press conferences not that long ago saying, look, I'm not the one who did this. I was the one trying to save him. And so they're getting this out. They paused proceedings at this point, and then they go on to Timothy Nuttall. And he just talked about, again, some of the same stuff. Stephen Mullaney testified that, what did I do with this? Oh, here it goes. He talked about Karen Reed's reaction. I mentioned her emotional state, recounting her screaming about the victim's identity and his status. He was reflecting on the atmosphere. He talked about the police response, that dispatchers were advised that Karen Reed was making suicidal statements, prompting officers to ensure her safety and well-being during the incident. The defense kind of pushed back a little bit on that. They were trying to indicate, how could you possibly have known that? What was interesting is, I think it was on day 5, another witness had talked about how they heard Karen making these suicidal statements, but then they introduced video to him. It's like, oh, how could you have possibly heard that when you were such and such distance away and you were actively performing emergency services on Mr. O'Keefe yourself? He's like, oh, I guess I was. Basically laying the foundation that, okay, this is what we're going to say. Everybody's going to get here and we're all going to say the same thing. Karen's distraught. She's making suicidal ideations to everybody, suggesting that she knows what she just did and maybe she's starting to sober up, and she's making these suicidal threats because she knows what's coming, which is she's guilty of murder, which is the prosecution's theory. Defense is like, hold up, hold the phone on all of that. Where's this coming from? They talked about clearing of evidence, about how one of the officers used a leaf blower to clear snow around the scene for evidence collection, demonstrating efforts to maintain the integrity of the investigative process.
It
which
looks
is
like they're trying so hard to incriminate her. Like so hard.
Now, you're saying that as a layperson, which is interesting. What do you think about okay, you know enough about evidence collection in our cases to know that you're super careful with the evidence. You don't touch anything. You need everything as is, documented, like, especially the crime scene. You treat it like an archaeological site. Mm-hmm. They brought out a freaking leaf blower and were blowing snow around. How do you know there wasn't evidence in that snow? How do you know there wasn't remnants of blood? How do you know there wasn't DNA? How do you know that there wasn't some kind of other incriminating evidence? You don't know what you don't know. They're using a leaf blower to kind of clear the area, and it's problematic. You
don't tamper with evidence.
Well, this isn't tampering. That's just being negligent. And then the question becomes, is it negligent because you're dumb, or is it negligent because it was on purpose? See what I'm getting at? And so, that was, going into day 3, you kind of see the defense as...
Now I see why you're telling me that they're doing such a horrendous job.
Well, number one, it's the order of witnesses that I don't like. I don't understand what points they're trying to make. So they make this statement about how she's guilty of running him over with the car, and they're starting with these witnesses. They're kind of talking about haphazardly the relationship, family dynamics.
That has nothing to do with what actually happened.
Yeah, you're trying to find something like maybe they could have started with the voicemail about how she says I effing hate you, and I don't remember verbatim what she said, but it was something along those lines.
Something along those lines.
I would have started with that, and then I would have possibly started with what would be the motive. I would have started with maybe the alcohol consumption. Maybe start with the bartender. How much was she drinking? But for them to start with these rather mundane
Something with a little
witnesses.
something a little bit closer to what happened, to when it happened.
I mean, it's all when it happened. It's just the framing of it all
Yeah, they're starting like in an odd timeline. That's what you're trying to tell me.
is weird. Yeah. Hey, Dominic, how far are we in on this show?
We are about 34 minutes.
Ooh.
34. Wow. Oh, we're not that bad. We're not doing that bad. All right, so let's go on to day 3. So on day 3, paramedics had come in to testify that Karen Reed admitted to hitting her boyfriend during the trial. That's an important. Why don't we start with that? Why is day 3 testimony on day 3? That's probably what they should have led with. Her admissions to the paramedics about how she hit her boyfriend. I've been reading this book about the art of storytelling. The author of Moneyball, I can't think of his name right now. But one of the things he talks about in storytelling, which fits my theories of primacy and recency, is that you start with a narrative. There's a way to frame it. And if you're framing this with one of the witnesses, maybe the opening line of this story that you're telling is her recitations to the paramedics about, oh my God, I hit Mr. O'Keefe. I killed him. That's what they've said. Maybe you start with that. And then in the jury's mind, you put them there and she's admitting to it. And now, right off the bat, you don't have to think too hard much now. Didn't she just admit it? So why are we doing this trial? And mind you, the jurors are not supposed to know anything about this case, not have followed it locally, which is difficult to do over there in Boston, Massachusetts, especially a case like this that's gained so much renown. But you have to put something in the jury's mind that is, obviously she's guilty. What are we doing here? To me, that's what you would have started with. They chose to start with, the most boring witnesses you could possibly think of. Those witnesses really are not worth anything.
This reminds me of Johnny's and Amber's case. It was like 6 weeks also of trial where supposedly the jury was not supposed to look at social media or anything outside. And it was like super hard because everywhere they were slamming information of the case.
Well, you have to sequester juries sometimes, and like that's a whole. You don't ever want to be in a sequestered jury. That sucks. They put you in a hotel. They steal your internet. You're allowed to watch.
They block everything. I know.
Yeah, it sucks.
I think you're not even allowed in some cases to speak to people outside.
No, not about the case.
No.
About anything else, just not about the case. All right, so day 3. Here are the main takeaways. 2 paramedics confirmed that Karen Reed admitted she hit her boyfriend. There was video footage that was used to question the paramedics' accounts during cross-examination by the defense. They did a brilliant job of cross-examination. The 2 paramedics were Katie McLaughlin, Anthony Flamati, I think is how you pronounce it. The judge had tried to implement a buffer zone around the courthouse because there was stuff going on. There was some motions that were decided. But essentially the testimony was this. McLaughlin testified that Karen Reed said, I hit him. This admission by Reed regarding the incident was, again, what they should have started with. She said that she repeated it several times. She repeated the statement over and over and over again. She acted distraught, according to McLaughlin, implying that, she was emotionally distraught, potentially because she knew that she was guilty of murder, I guess would have been the implication. The response of law enforcement, she did mention a little bit about that, noting that an officer had signaled for another individual, likely a sergeant, after Reed had repeated her admission, indicating that they were now putting her into primary suspect mode. Let's go pull her aside and start interrogating her. Anthony Flamati gets on the stand, testified that he also heard Karen confess at the scene. And she said, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him. But on cross-examination, the defense and the brilliance of their cross-examination so far, they question his ability to hear what Reed was saying while he was performing aid. Now, look, you could very well be performing CPR on somebody, doing chest compressions, maybe doing, I don't know, whatever you can, some vigorous thing, and hear somebody in the background shouting stuff. I do it all the time. Matter of fact, when I'm in trial, I could hear in the background stuff that's going on, you know, if it's loud enough or pronounced enough or important enough. And so the fact that he asked that question is not all that important because, of course, he could explain it away. And in redirect, prosecution did try to do that. The point is, the jurors are going to have those questions just enough. And remember what the goal is. What is the North Star of the defense? Raise reasonable doubts. And so here they question him. How is it possible that you heard her say those things while you're performing aid? And the answer, of course, is because she was screaming it, sir. It was kind of, I'm not deaf. I have ears. They work even when I'm doing stuff, you know, especially if it's out of the ordinary. Could easily have explained it away, but it was a question. Flamati testified that he heard Karen make the confession. She said that. I asked her if there had been any significant trauma that happened before this, and McLaughlin said that she said, I hit him. I repeated it. She repeated it one more time. McLaughlin, oh, I'm on McLaughlin. Apologize, I'm mixing up my notes here. Flamati had testified that he heard those confessions, but during cross, Reed's attorney, Alan Jackson, who is a brilliant attorney, I don't know how many times I could say that, showed jurors a 3-minute video clip of what appeared to be Flamati giving O'Keefe chest compressions and questioned how he could have heard Reed while providing first aid. And then Flamati acknowledged that he had not seen that video that they were talking about. And that was it. Moving on to day 4. Oh, Just Jules says, Omar and Ileana. Ileana's not here today, Jules. It's just Melissa. She's here, staring at me blankly as I'm going over this trial recap. She says, I'm so freaking glad that you guys are doing this case. Yeah, this is a crazy one. All right, so let me regain my.
I think they're on day 9.
Oh yeah, I'm just getting through the first week. So on day 4, the key takeaways was there were more witnesses that testified about Reed's distressed behavior and statements. There were conflicting statements regarding whether Reed had admitted hitting her boyfriend. There were statements about how Reed's mood had fluctuated. There was a lot of things. The witnesses that testified was Jason Becker, Daniel Whitley, Greg Woodbury, Katie McLaughlin. I think they were finishing up with her. She had testified again on that day about the demeanor. She had talked about I guess she was just talking about the statements. I apologize. This is an editing moment, Dominic, where I lose my place in my notes and I start rereading stuff that I've already talked about.
Well, you're trying to recompile 9 days of court, so it's easy to get lost.
Yeah. How did I do this? Well, oh, that was just a recap. Okay. So Jason Becker, his testimony, that's where we left off. Again, he describes Reed as being cooperative, and that she was repeatedly asking O'Keefe if she was dead. Becker mentions that she had blood on her face and neck area and was making suicidal statements. Although he had noted that she had no plan to act on these statements, according to him. The blood on the face is obviously because she was trying to render CPR to the guy, chest compressions and all of that. Yeah, that's not significant for anything. Reed had expressed concern about who's going to take care of O'Keefe's niece and nephew. Becker noted that Reed's mood fluctuated during their interaction, which is important because if your mood fluctuates, it suggests that you are forcing emotions. It suggests that you are making it up on the fly. It suggests that similar to, when you talk to a kid and they don't want to eat their vegetables, like, oh, I can't, my stomach hurts and everything else. And then you get them out of the situation, and they start playing with their My daughters just did this the other day. My mind is on toddlers right now.
Okay, but that's a child. But I mean, I would.
But you see it with guilty folks all the time. Like, for example, in the trial that I just did, perfect example, on direct examination, they're perfect angels and everything. Then when I get on them on cross-examination, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, yeah, that might have happened. I don't remember exactly. But they had perfect recall when they were being questioned by their attorney. Now I'm questioning them on cross-examination.
Forget.
Don't you remember when they scheduled court on such and such a day? I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not sure.
Well, the judge was here when you said it. You heard the judge say it. You were sitting right there. It's like, oh, I don't really pay attention to dates. Right. And so the point is they're trying to make her look like she was trying to put something on with her expressions. He observed that Reed had periods of calmness, but also became agitated at times, naturally, particularly when she didn't want to go to the hospital.
I wouldn't blame her mood swings, if I could say it that way.
Well, I mean,
If you just underwent a traumatic
don't think about
situation-
yourself right now. Think about yourself when you're hungover in Vegas. Now, you just took a trip to Vegas, right?
Mhm.
Or last weekend.
Mhm.
And I'm sure, you don't have to tell me, but I'm sure that just put yourself when you're drinking. It's 3, 4, 5 in the morning. You're probably starting to feel a little hungover. Maybe you got a headache. Maybe you're agitated, but you realize that there was some physical crazy thing that just happened. Hey, your boyfriend is dead. And you're sobering up as everything's going on. That's a lot to process.
That's a lot of things happening at the same time.
Yeah, and so what you could take away from her behavior in that moment, as long as she's not giving inconsistent statements, and that's the one thing that's been consistent in this case throughout, is that Karen Reed has not been inconsistent. From the day that she was investigated, I have not heard any reports, and it hasn't come out in testimony, that she was saying one thing and then another. Everything was like a progression of a realization, like, oh my God, we're having a good time with my boyfriend. We're out with friends. We're drinking. I'm leaving the party because I'm getting frustrated. John's not coming out. And then I think she goes home. She goes to bed. And then where's my boyfriend? And oh my God, is he dead? Did I hit him? Did I do something? Trying to recall genuinely what happened. And I don't know how people are going to take that. I don't know how the jury is taking that. And all that evidence hasn't even really been fully fleshed out in this trial. But I think that her fluctuations in behavior, if that's what they're focusing on, is not where they're going to score points in this case. Maybe it will. I don't know. But in my opinion, not really. On cross, when Becker was crossed, there was a sidebar, and then defense attorney Yannetti shows Becker the reports from lead investigator Michael Proctor. Becker said that he told Proctor on February 14th that Reed had said she consumed alcohol the night before O'Keefe's death. And then Yannetti also asked Becker if Reed's speech was rapid, if she was fixated on whether O'Keefe was dead, and then he answered in the affirmative both times. He zeroed in on Becker's statement about Reed had denied taking drugs or alcohol that day. He says, you would agree that she did tell you at some point that she had alcohol the night before, correct? Becker says, no. Citing Becker's statement to the case lead investigator on February 14th. Yannetti asked if Reed had said she hadn't taken drugs, but acknowledged she did consume some alcohol last night. And then he goes into the whole thing. Canton firefighter Daniel Whitley goes in there to testify, Reed being upset, again, expressing concerns about O'Keefe's niece, just kind of corroborating some of the other stuff. On cross-examination, Whitley was asked about whether or not he knew about Karen Reed's medical history, which led to a referral to a coworker's report confirming Reed's MS diagnosis. He questioned Whitley about Reed's behavior and mood during the ambulance ride to the hospital, focusing on her statements about caring for O'Keefe. There were inquiries about Reed's distress, reluctance to go to the hospital, concerns about her ability to care for the children. Whitley had questioned about Reed's interactions with him during the ambulance ride, where the mood shifted from being emotional to asking about Carrie Roberts in a seemingly disconnected manner. Really, it's almost like a cumulative witness at this point. There's not a whole lot of points being scored there. Greg Woodbury goes in again to testify about what he observed, mentions assisting with CPR at the scene, describing O'Keefe's physical condition, including bruising over his right eye. So this is important. He was hit by a car. The question is, how do you get hit with the car and have the injuries that he has? So this is the first time that we're starting to get to what
The
was his
actual
injuries.
injuries.
Yeah, so there was bruising over his right eye,
Okay.
scratches on his forearm. Now I've seen pictures of those scratches. Dominic's going to put flash a picture of those injuries, but it looked like he was clawed at by an animal. You know, what was that about? So you're not going to get that. I don't care how. I can't imagine how you could be backed into and have the scratch marks. And they were fresh injuries. And their theory of the case is that, you know, he was beaten up in the house and attacked by a dog. So the prosecution has to explain these injuries. Woodbury highlights, again, he talks about her emotional state, her behavior. He discussed a Section 12 response for Reed, indicating that she made threats against her life, stating she didn't want to live anymore. If her husband had died, wasn't her husband, but that's what he said. He described the emotional fluctuations again. On cross, it was a lot of the same stuff. How could you know this and that, whatever. It wasn't really that eventful of a day. So a lot of the week one stuff was just really just kind of setting the stage, basically building the timeline. And that's just kind of the way that they're doing. They're doing it in a very linear fashion. Week two was a little more eventful because they started talking about the red cup stuff. Now, I know you have not watched this trial, but I have never in my life heard another officer say that they put evidence in a red cup because they thought that it wasn't that big of a deal. There were severe questions as to chain of custody evidence, regardless of whether or not this was a frame job or not. The utter incompetence about how they collected the evidence is already raising red flags with this jury. I promise you, it's utterly ridiculous. Let's get to the recap. So,
What did they put in a red cup?
evidence. We'll get to that. It was basically blood samples, among other things. There was Katie McLaughlin. They accused her of perjury, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But they were basically challenging their collection methods, including blood samples and crime scene processing in the snow. Remember the wind blower? The testimony was that it was a chaotic scene. There was a lot of stuff going on, lack of protocols and evidence handling. There was more stuff about Karen Reed's distress, conflicting reports about her admission of hitting the victim. I think it was Paul Gallagher. So here's what he said. Paul Gallagher testified that he was in charge of preserving the crime scene where O'Keefe was found. He receives a call about O'Keefe being found unresponsive in the snow. Gallagher describes the unique challenges of processing the scene due to snowy weather, whatever. They use a leaf blower to clear the snow of the area, whatever. He mentioned finding pink spots in the snow, which were believed to be blood. And they collected those blood samples using plastic cups to prevent contamination. Why is that important? Because what if those blood samples contain DNA from, let's just assume that the guy was beaten up inside the house, right? To the degree where he's injured enough to be left for dead in a snowy night in Boston, Massachusetts. What if some of those blood spatter in the snow belonged to the DNA of some of the other individuals in the house? What if? The point being, if there was any other DNA other than Mr. O'Keefe's that was collected in the blood, it wouldn't have been from Karen. She didn't even get out the car, I don't think. At least it hasn't come out so far. I mean, doing CPR and all that kind of stuff, maybe. There's a lot of questions. And look, there's not really a stone cold way to do it. I'm just stating that the way that they collected the evidence is problematic. And the defense did a really good job of following up on that. He talked about the examination of Karen's SUV. They discussed the examination of her SUV, which prosecutors had alleged was obviously that they hit him. There was video of the vehicle being examined that was shown to the jurors. Under cross-examination, he was questioned, Gallagher was, about the lack of a written report. Why didn't you guys write a report regarding his role in the case and the absence of diagrams, which would normally be readily made available in the file, showing the exact location of evidence like the cocktail glass and blood spots, because there's some indication that, well, either she hit him with a cocktail glass and there's remnants of it or whatever, or she hit him with the car. There's multiple theories, right?
And nothing of that has been popped up in exhibits?
Well, not so far. As a matter of fact, they're talking about to Gallagher about why you didn't take certain measures to collect this evidence. Gallagher mentions that it was the first time he had processed a crime scene in the snow and used a leaf blower for this purpose. He also clarified that procedures followed were improvised due to the inclement weather, which I find really hard to believe in Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston? Parentheses, if somebody would tell me that here in California, okay, I get you. But over there, I think it rains like 93% of the year. Something along those lines.
You have, in Boston, admittedly, I've never been to Boston, but inclement weather is a thing out there.
Yeah,
You know,
it's super common.
There, in my 43 years of
When
life,
did this happen? When was the date of the crime?
January 29th, 2022.
Okay.
It was in
Plain
January.
Winter.
Well, either way, the fact that they didn't have protocols in place
That's
to deal
suspicious.
with a snowy crime scene is ludicrous and astonishing that this effing guy would jump on the witness stand and confidently just declare that, which suggests to me a couple of things. Lack of witness preparation, for one. And for two, utter incompetence on the part of this guy. But it also may be, a blessing to the prosecution, because look, it's not that she was being framed. It's just that this guy was an idiot. They're going to have to eventually just come to grips that, yeah, look, maybe there's some things he could have done better. Of course, there's protocol for how to handle crime scenes in the snow. I guarantee you, in the defense's case in chief, they're going to introduce witnesses who will testify. Oh yeah, we certainly have protocol. Would you ever use a leaf blower to investigate a crime scene to clear out snow? Absolutely not, because of whatever reason. Would you ever collect blood samples and place them in a red Solo cup, the kind that you have at these
Parties.
college parties or whatever? No, that's retarded. We put it in a sterilized baggie so that they're preserved, chain of custody, and we would document all of these things. This guy didn't even write a report.
More so. That's a crime scene. But even in hospitals and other places where you have to give lab samples for your blood or stools or anything, you're required to put them in a sterilized cup that the hospital gives you. And if you put them in something else, they're like, nope, contaminated.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness is not qualified to be making those statements. Sustained. Thank you. I apologize. I'm in trial mode. But I know your point. I know the point you're making. Because yeah, that's just pretty much common sense.
That's why keep saying, trying so hard to frame her. So hard.
Where did I leave off? Oh, so estimations and measurements. So Gallagher was queried about how the locations of evidence, like the glass and the blood spots, were identified at the scene. And Jackson said, he pointed out that without measurements taken, that those locations were estimates or guesses, and basically pointing the jury to the unreliability of whatever was in what came from this police investigation, right? Gallagher was asked by the defense about the improvisational nature of the evidence collection process, especially in snowy conditions. And then again, he highlights the leaf blower and the cups. Gallagher was asked about the absence of certain evidence. He confirmed that certain pieces of evidence, like a shoe or broken taillight, were not found by him on the scene. Important, because he was one of the first persons to investigate the crime scene. So if he used a leaf blower and he's blowing away snow, and they found, I think they said that they found remnants of the taillight like days afterwards, in the same spot where Mr. O'Keefe was. And one of the theories is, oh, well, maybe it was like buried in the snow and the snow melted and that's why they didn't see it. It's like, I don't know. If you're blowing away the snow, I have a leaf blower because I'm a dad. I just do. And it does a pretty good job of blowing everything away. Like it's going to catch pieces of a taillight to the point where you're not going to miss it, especially if you got headlights focused on it and lights and reflective. Just, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they would admit to something like that. Jackson questioned Gallagher about the handling of certain evidence, including a dirty rag, a grocery bag observed near Reed's SUV. He raised concerns about the potential for cross-examination because, of course, and there was this section of testimony where he's like, the guy was like, well, I don't know what definition of sterile you mean. He was asking, so was the cup sterile? Like, well, I'd imagine it would be sterile. I'd imagine they wouldn't be selling non-sterile cups. And then he keeps on pressing the issue. And then one of the words that came out of his mouth was, I guess it depends on the definition of sterile that you mean. And this is a guy handling the evidence. Obviously, sterile means like sterile, like no potential for cross-examination, no potential, chain of custody.
What's his definition?
I don't know what his definition. I just think maybe he just means clean. Like, oh, I could just blow on it. It's sterile now. What? Oh, you can't make this shit up, man. All right. So he was pressed on the absence of protocol. So the defense scored a lot of points. And this guy, Paul Gallagher, he just kind of crapped the bed there for the prosecutor's case in chief. Interesting how they're going to fix that. Let's talk about Sergeant Sean Good. He came in, testified about preserving the crime scene where John O'Keefe was found and the methods used. He again talked about a leaf blower in the snow. He testifies as the shift supervisor on the day of O'Keefe's death. He details the initial response to the scene interactions with Karen and other individuals. His initial response, he says, Good recalled receiving a 911 call in the early hours of the morning about O'Keefe being found unresponsive in the snow. And he was among the first responders at the scene on Fairview Road. He describes the chaotic scene again, like everybody else had, about what was going on. So I think one thing is pretty clear. Here's the image that I'm getting through this repetition of evidence. Crime scene. Karen is not really understanding what's going on. Her boyfriend is laying there dead. She's trying to resuscitate him. And then the first responders get there and they just basically obliterate the crime scene. That's the picture that I would have if I was the jury. A leaf blower, plastic cups. You don't know what sterile means? What are we doing? What? What do you think, Melissa? What is your layperson? Dominic, what do you think of that?
Ridiculous.
Totally. It was ridiculous.
I don't know if I was the judge, and I don't have experience in law school, law, being an attorney, a lawyer, and a judge, anything, but like a lead person, like you just said, if I was the judge, I would have been like, okay, no, I can't do this. No, I can't lead with people so unprofessional.
I just think that was a lack of witness preparation. Listen, I don't know how many trials I've done in my career. It's probably close to 100.
I think you already surpassed the 100.
One of the first lessons that I learned as a trial attorney is that if you don't prep your witness for trial, then you are preparing to lose. Because witnesses, look, they got to know how to testify. They have to know what to say. Not that you're trying to mislead anybody, but they don't have to volunteer information. And what's more is when people are like you said, when you testified, oh, I was so nervous, and you were testifying to stuff that you remembered, that you knew. And I've talked to you about your testimony, and you presented it to me one way, and when you were in front of the judge, it came out a different way. I had to coax it out of you, and it wasn't that you didn't know what you were talking about. It's just that when you're nervous and everybody's looking at you,
everybody get jinx in your mind.
It's different.
It just like
if you don't take the time to prep your witness and let them make them comfortable with you, let them know what questions are coming, tell them, look, you can't give a wrong answer. You're just going to be talking about the truth. If you get stuck, don't worry about it. I know what you're wanting to say. I will make sure I ask the right questions. And you and I, matter of fact, I prepped you as my witness. You got to go through that whole experience. Was that helpful? What if I didn't do that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine what would have happened. I think I would have cried. Because I prepped myself various times, and I was nervous. I couldn't even deal to think what would have happened if I would have sat at that stand and questions were just started to
I do remember there was one question that I asked you, and then we broke for lunch, and it was like, Why did you say that? It's like, I didn't understand what was being asked, and I had to fix it on
Yes.
redirect.
I really did not understand what they were asking me.
Yeah, but you didn't know what you were saying either. You couldn't process it. I was processing it, and it came out a certain way. But when the adrenaline is going and the endorphins are rushing and there's everybody looking at you and the judges, yeah, it's just a different way to communicate. Jules says that my brother uses a leaf blower when we get light, fluffy snow to help out over at my mom's, and it gets a good 95% of it. There's like a light layer still, but you can see the driveway. Yeah, for sure. They're framing her. That's what they're doing. I don't know if they're framing her yet. There's some compelling evidence that's yet to come out that they're definitely going to get to, but they are not doing themselves any favor by
They're not doing a good job.
the way that they've investigated this case. Just look, if you're trying to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, if all the juror has to do is look at the method of how the case evidence was preserved and say, well, that's not reliable. I mean, there's a reasonable doubt. Case is over. Case is over. But, you know, before I spend too much time on that, where was I on? We talked about Sergeant Good. And, oh, okay. So on cross-examination,
What day are we on?
oh, this is day 5.
Okay.
Day 5. There's, again, questions about the handling of evidence. There's just questions about the decision-making process. His responses to the 911 calls and the actions that were taken on the information that he received. But basically, that was the main takeaway. We don't have to go any further with that. How are we doing on time, Dominic?
We're about an hour and 5.
An hour? I got to speed this up. Okay. Michael Lank, he was interviewed about the jury or without the jury presence to determine the relevancy of his background to his upcoming testimony. But ultimately, this was his background. He provided a background about his role within the police department, his involvement in the investigation. He had talked about biases in relationships and things. Again, he talked about the handling of evidence. He talked about his position as a lieutenant, the scrutiny that may have extended to his exercise of discretion and leadership. There wasn't a whole lot there. I think the star evidence was Red Cup guy. That is one that is going to go down in infamy. That was the main takeaway. I don't think anybody's going to get their mind off of Red Cup guy. Going on to day 6. Day 6 was significant. It included, all right, so here they're finally putting us at the bar. Karina, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Kolakathis, talks about interactions at the bar. So
Who's her?
going back, this is one of the friends. They're at the bar that night. They're going bar hopping, bar to bar, which I don't know. Is that a thing that you do? Bar hopping?
Too old for that.
You're like 30.
Exactly. I'm too old for that. I've been too old for that since I was like 25.
I don't know. Dominic, are you a bar hopper?
I do occasionally go bar hopping.
Yeah, but he's young. He's in the flower of his youth.
Why don't you just like pick a spot and just stick with it? Like, what do you got to go exploring for? Like, you're already there.
This sounds like a 21-year-old thing.
I don't know, man. But
How old were they?
oh, these people are in their 40s, varying ages.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah. So there's interactions at the bar. Karina testified that Karen and John, they appeared to be, so this was significant. They appeared to be affectionate.
They appear?
Appeared. Like they were being lovey-dovey or whatever, hugging up on each other. They're also pretty blitzed. Everybody's kind of in that state with the appropriate amount of alcohol, sometimes with strangers. But they were being that way with each other.
Karina and the guy.
No. Talking about Karen and O'Keefe.
Okay.
There were statements indicating that they were happy, excited about their relationships. She had mentioned conversations where Reed expressed admiration and love for O'Keefe, particularly for his dedication to his niece and nephew.
Mm-hmm.
They also discussed future plans. There was an upcoming trip. There was plans to visit Fairview Road. There was a mention of Jennifer McCabe suggesting a visit to her sister's house on Fairview Road, where there was some confusion about who was going where among the group present at the bar. And again, more talk about affectionate behavior. Witnesses observed that Reed and O'Keefe were affectionate at the point where others were noticing and commenting on their loving behavior. And there was some indication that somebody's like, hey, how come you're not like that with me? You know, that kind of thing. So it wasn't just like, it wasn't trivial. I mean, they appeared to be a happy couple. Karina portrayed Karen as someone who cared for children and was open about her relationship with O'Keefe. There was details about the atmosphere, about the bar, interactions among friends, and the general mood of the group where they were celebrating that night. And then there was some indication, well, before I get into that, Nicholas had testified, I know we're running out of time, that he mentioned that his arrival at the bar, I think this is Nicholas's Karina's husband. He mentioned his arrival at the bar where they met with friends, including the McCabe's and Alberts on the night of January 28th. He described the atmosphere at the bar as lively. There was a band playing, everyone enjoying themselves. He noted that O'Keefe typically drank beer. Karen was seen drinking a clear liquid from the glass. That's obviously vodka. What other clear alcohols are there? Sake?
Tequila.
Sometime? Well, yeah.
There's another one, mezcal.
All right, never mind. There's nothing to gain. Yeah, she was drinking some kind of a mixed drink. He talked about relationship dynamics that she testified about them being affectionate. There was a decision to leave. He mentioned that the group discussed moving on to another bar or to McCabe's sister's house on Fairview, but he ultimately decided to leave with his wife and not join them. Good for him. He said there was no tension. Didn't observe any tension whatsoever between Reed and O'Keefe during their time at the bar, noting that their behavior seemed affectionate and caring. He recalled details about John O'Keefe, his attire, his demeanor at the bar, indicating there was nothing that seemed out of ordinary that night. And that was it. Just, that was the scene. Rebecca Trayers was the bartender. And this is what she had to say. So she explained, this is at the Waterfall Bar. They served beer, wine, and liquor. They had live music on Fridays and Saturdays. Their closing time was 12:45 a.m. Seems kind of early.
Yeah.
You know what blew my mind? So I went from being a writer with the Spotlight at that hip hop magazine, where I was going to these clubs that were open until like 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and these 21 and over clubs. And then I moved to Ohio. It was like, oh, we don't sell alcohol on Sundays. There's nothing open that's past midnight. I was like, what universe am I living in right now?
You know that happens in Texas as well. One
Yeah.
of my best friends lives there, and he told me that I think it's Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays past 7 p.m. you cannot get alcohol anywhere that's not a bar, anywhere. Like over here, we just go to Ralph's.
Well,
There's-
yeah.
At all times.
It is, yes, absence of alcohol is over here. So Rebecca, she's the bartender. She talks, again, just laying the scene. Recognized O'Keefe as a regular. He typically drank beer. Brian Albert, his wife, and Brian Higgins were also mentioned as being present. She talked about her interaction with John. Noted that O'Keefe visited the bar that night to order a beer. She observed the presence of other individuals, including regular patrons and acquaintances. She confirmed the presence of O'Keefe and others on the evening in question, highlighting a typical and enjoyable atmosphere at the bar. So there's nothing of note that would indicate that anything is afoot. So far, the only thing that you really have that hasn't even really come into evidence yet is the voicemail that was left by Karen. That's going to come eventually. But everybody's having a good time. Maybe there's relationship problems. There's been a lot of speculation in this case about, hey, Karen was cheating with one of the guys that was in the house. John was living this bachelor life because he was enjoying his life as a cop and just keeping his options open. There was some indication that their relationship was on the rocks. So far as the testimony is coming out, that's not really bearing.
Why is there always allegations of cheating? Always.
Well, their motive, right? She shared her personal associations, knowledge of the Albert family, and their frequented presence at the bar, along with insights into Higgins and ATF agents with ties to the Canton Police Department. Kurt Roberts had talked about his friendship with John, testified about his friendship with O'Keefe, talked about interactions at the bar, describing the night of January 28th where O'Keefe and Karen Reed were present among friends. He observed conversations. Everyone was acting normal and friendly about when they left. He talked about he described his action in response to the news, including his efforts to support his wife and assist in the search for O'Keefe. So when he found out, this is what his testimony was. He recounted the events of the following morning when his wife received calls and texts about John. That's when he realized that John was missing. And then he's trying to lend his support. He portrayed Karen as a caring and involved, loving person, involved with children, particularly in coordinating activities and events. And that was it. Catherine came in to talk about, again, about how they were socializing, about how they were, they're all just basically kind of corroborating everything. There's not really anything of note that's going to raise any or score any points for the prosecution in this point. So I'm going to move on because we're running out of time. You know what I should do? I should really I don't see why I can't just do like daily recaps of these cases. Do this all in 2 weeks. It's a daunting task to say the least. Hey Dominic, edit that part out. All right. Julie Albert. Let's talk about her. So Julie Albert gets up to testify. On the morning of January 29th of 22, she drove to her brother-in-law Albert's home after picking up donuts for her nephew. On the morning of January 29th, she found the family visibly upset, and Jennifer McCabe, I can't wait for her to come and testify. She's the one where there's like deleted text messages and all this other craziness going on. But Jennifer McCabe had informed her that something had happened to John with uncertainty about his condition. She talks about interactions with Courtney Proctor. There were questions about frequency and nature of her interactions, calls and conversation with Proctor on specific dates, police inquiries. There were state police troopers visiting Albert's home a few days after O'Keefe's death. She highlighted her ties to individuals involved in the case, including her sister-in-law, Nicole, and her husband, Brian, as well as state police investigator Michael Proctor and Canton police officers. On cross-examination, they dove into her relationship with those individuals and their potential impact on the case. Of course, they're still trying to paint the picture that there is collusion going on in this case, that she's being framed. Julie's responses to the events on January 29th, they talked about that. They talked about her memory and details. Albert gets on the stand to testify, talks about his relationship with John, says that O'Keefe was a neighbor who frequented Albert's pizza shop with his nephew. He considered him a friend, had a friendly relationship. He talks about the events on January 28th. He said he texted O'Keefe about meeting up that night, but they ended up at different bars initially. They eventually met at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. No signs of tension. Okay. Talked about the clear liquid. Talked about the end of the evening. They had fireball shots. Jesus. When's the last time you had a fireball shot?
Are you talking to me or him?
Either or.
Never.
Been a while.
I was like 18 maybe.
Yeah.
18 or 19.
You're talking about the little liquor that has like a yellow. Yeah, no, never. My brother used to.
It's literally like a cinnamon flavored. I don't know if it's whiskey. It's like mystery alcohol. I don't know what it's supposed to be.
There was a challenge on that, I remember, and my brother stupidly did it.
What did he do?
I think it was 18. No. Scratch that. I was already living here, so I was like 22. Maybe he was like 20, something along those lines, and he saw it online. Like you had to like chug the entire thing, something like that, in like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that. And then I come home and my house is entirely destroyed because the thing burned his entire throat, and he was like drinking water, milk, everything. It was a disaster.
That just sounds like not a lot of fun.
Yes.
Let's get into some of this testimony with Julie. cross-examination, I thought that this was important. He asked him, "Do you deny that you were very close with Courtney Proctor?" Albert said no. Courtney Proctor's brother, Michael Proctor, he's the lead state investigator on this case.
We're already past an hour.
How are we doing on time, Dominic?
An hour 20 right now.
We're on an hour 20?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ. How much more do I got to go?
It's a long trial, and they're still not even on half of it.
All right. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up. Yesterday at trial, Lieutenant Charles Ray gets to testify, and he said that he responded to the scene where an unresponsive man was found, learning that the O'Keefe was a Boston police officer. See, the problem with these 2-month-long trials is that they're so cumulative in the evidence. I understand why it is, but the danger that you have as an attorney is that I often feel it sometimes with the judges. Like, you don't want the case to move on too long. I understand you got a lot of stuff you got to get to, but you got to hit your points. And the reason why you get it all in evidence is for appellate purposes, really. But the problem is you have this cumulative evidence. Everybody's kind of repeating the same thing. It corroborates some things. It cements the timeline for the jury. It just makes it drag on so much. But he testifies. He learned about that O'Keefe was an officer. He conducted a well check on O'Keefe's children, not inspecting the right rear passenger side of Karen Reed's vehicle at the scene. On cross, they focused on specific details related to evidence handling, preservation, inspection at the scene, cross-examination. They hit him with, they talked about potential oversights that he did. And again, it's hard to kind of paraphrase all that because I got like 10 minutes to wrap this up. Adam Lawley, they talked about his is mostly just cumulative evidence, probing potential inconsistencies, testimony. Yeah, same stuff. Here's the bottom line. I'm going to wrap this up right now. Here's my takeaway from everything without boring everybody, just going through every single individual. This is much better served in like a daily recap. Hey, how did that?
What happened?
That's me.
Oh, is that you? Said I got sick of Smirnoff in my early 20s, and now if I get the slightest whiff of it, yeah, you know what that happened to me with? Goldschlager. I don't even know if you guys know what that is. It's like some weird mystery alcohol that has gold remnants in it. It's probably not gold. It's probably like gold shavings or whatever. Really bad. It's similar to Fireball. Here's my take with this case. So far, I don't think that the prosecution is doing a very good job of letting the jury know that this is a case where Karen Reed ran into her boyfriend, husband, left him for dead in the snow. We haven't even gotten to the voicemail yet, as far as I'm aware. Basically, if I'm scoring this on a fighting card, if I'm going like the first 3 rounds, we're basically in round 3 at this point. The defense is winning all of these rounds, and there's not really much happening. We know about the state as far as the evidence has come out. We know they went to a bar. From what all of the witnesses have said, they had a good relationship. It was a loving relationship. They were being affectionate with each other. Nobody was really upset at each other. At some point, Karen becomes enraged. She gets really upset. She leaves. And according to the prosecution, she's supposed to have ran over him with the car. But what has actually come out, if I'm a juror and I'm sitting on this case, the things that are sticking out into my mind is this. They found him. Karen was distraught. She was probably intoxicated. She was trying to help him. She was trying to perform CPR. She was doing chest compressions and all of those things. And that the investigation about how the crime scene was investigated was like amateur hour. That's what I'm getting from this trial so far, through the first couple of weeks of evidence. If you ask me to provide who's winning and who's losing. Well, right now, the prosecution is not really impressing in terms of them trying to prove them that their case. And it's a long trial. I understand. It's a really long trial. I get it. My biggest criticism right now of the prosecution is their lack of understanding of how to present this case to a jury that's impactful, that's going to lend itself to, oh, Karen did this. And now she's trying to cover it up because she's trying to help him out. But she was only doing that because of the guilt that she felt. They're trying to do that, but it's just not landing from what I can tell. And again, it's a long trial. There's a long way to go. But in terms of trying to prove their case and trying to carry their burden, they're not doing what I had wanted them to do when I first started covering this case a couple of weeks ago. They had to get over this idea, and of course, it was very loud in the opening statements from the defense team, that they have to overcome this idea that, yes, there are connections between O'Keefe, from the people that investigated this case, from the people that were in the house. They're all entangled somewhere. That has nothing to do with a conspiracy. What they're supposed to show is that has everything to do with, it's just circumstantial. They happen to be law enforcement. They are law enforcement. Law enforcement that works even in different departments in a city like Boston. They're going to know each other. And what the defense has done, they haven't done a good job so far. And again, they're not presenting their cases, so it's not like they're supposed to do this. But on cross-examination, at the very least, what they've been able to do is obliterate the methods of collection of evidence, which compromises the entire investigation on its face. And if you didn't have anything having to do with framing, if there's no allegation of inter-city or inter-department collusion of a conspiracy to frame Karen Read, and all you had was the collection of evidence, you have the foundation already for reasonable doubts. And we're in the prosecution's case in chief. And so it's problematic for them. I don't know where they're going from here. I mean, I actually do know where they're going. They're going to have to, at some point, get to the fireworks where we were talking about the voicemail. We have to get to the autopsy. They have to present evidence of the autopsy. I don't know if that came out today. I know they're in trial right now. Maybe I'll do a recap a little bit later about that. But for right now, it's not looking good. Everybody, all of the layperson commentary that I've seen focuses on the idea that the defense team is doing an outstanding job. And here's what I think is playing into that. I think that the judge is not likable. I think if you watch the judge in this case and you're just observing, I don't think that you look at her and you like her very much. And we've seen judges like that where in the Murdaugh case, everybody loved that judge. In the Darrell Brooks case, I forget that lady's name, but she was that was the sovereign citizen guy.
That's
remember
what I was
him?
going to ask you. Everybody loved her.
Loved her, but this
She was
judge just
amazing.
seems like an ornery. She's grumpy. She's always yelling at the defense team. It seems like she's having these interactions. She's on camera. She's not presenting when she doesn't have to present anything. But the people that are watching this trial, they're getting that impression, and they're being swayed, I think, that the judge is being unfair to the defense, and the defense is being so respectful, and they're presenting really well during their motions and their pretrial motions and all of those things. And if that's what's happening right now with the general public, the jury's sitting there are observing the same things. And I don't know where they're at. I just know that right now, if I was the prosecution, I would be really nervous. It's just not going well for them at all. It's supposed to be the nature of trial that your case in chief as a prosecution is when you're the defense attorney, it's supposed to feel bad. I always tell my clients that, look, they get to go first. Mm-hmm. They're going to put on their case. I just want you to know it's going to feel bad. You're going to think that we're losing.
It's one of the first things you always tell them.
You just have to wait because we get a chance to rebut. I get a chance to do cross-examination. We're going to put on our own case, all of those things. So just relax. Just relax. In this case, I don't have any indication that Karen so far is all that upset in anything that's come out. What have they got so far? My impressions are, okay, she was out having a good time. She was drinking. There was no motive to kill John so far from what I've seen in testimony.
That's it. That's everything they have.
When she found out that he was missing, she didn't remember what happened. She may or may not have made some statements about, oh, I hit him, I killed him, or something like that. paramedics has made those statements. But even that is questionable, and the defense even raised questions into whether or not she even said that. But she was definitely trying to help. It's just not the image that I would be nervous about if I was Karen. I think that right now she's probably fine. I think that when she goes back at the end of these trial days, she's over there high-fiving her defense teams. Oh, that came out really well. If you've ever experienced a trial, I could not imagine. I don't know what the longest trial I've ever been on. I think it was 3 weeks. It was a civil case out in LA. This is long before you were probably not even, you're still in diapers. You were not. That would have been back in 2017 or something. But it was the level of endurance you have to have as a trial attorney is just off the walls. Imagine, you've seen me in trial. I'm sitting there. I got my client sitting right there to my left. And as I'm trying to listen to the testimony, as I'm trying to listen for objections, listen for things that I need to bring up on my cross-examination, link their statements to what is in the known discovery. I'm doing all this processing. And then I got my client in my ear. Hey, don't forget to tell them, blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God.
It's like, I cannot listen to you and them and the judge and count. Listen.
And you may say it's not common. It is pretty common.
I give them what I've learned is I give them a pad of paper and I have them write it. I cannot have you yelling in my ear. It's just not, just write it down for me. I promise you I'll read it. And then 95% of the time it's like, nah, don't worry about that. Or sometimes I'll take it and be like, oh yeah, well, did you know that on such and such a day?
We practice it here well. If I have, for example, for family law cases, if I have to prep them for mediation, which happens a lot, they start asking me questions. I'm like, no, put it down in a piece of paper, write it down, type it down on your phone, whatever. And they do it, and it's easier that way.
Hey, Jules, that was not me. Whatever Dominic just typed, and it says that's not me. That's Dominic. He's producer Dominic over there. If I wanted to respond, I'll just say it. But I don't think anybody's going to be knowing that. So I would never. What did you say? What did you say, Dominic? What was your drink of choice?
Oh, beatboxes. No, so I put my name next to it.
Oh, I see what you did. And I'm big into beat boxes. What's beatboxes?
They're like little boxes that are like mixed drinks.
Why?
It's so good.
What drink are you trying to mix?
Because he's young, that's why.
It's good. I don't even know what drink's in it, but it's good.
Okay, do you drink like
I'm gonna bring you one next week, and you're gonna like it.
I will give it to my wife because it's more appropriate for her. So, do you do like well, let's just put it. What's the alcohol content by volume of these mixed drinks that you consume in a box? Are they like wine coolers?
I would say it's about 12% maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a recipe for Uncle Omar's world famous michelada.
Oh yeah.
If they sold them at Dodger Stadium, they would go for $50 per 12-ounce beverage. They are outstanding, and nobody makes them like I. It's just how it is. I'm sorry, I'm missing so many of you guys. By the way, I'm done with my recap on the trial, and so right now I'm just riffing with you guys. It's on the live. Dominic is going to edit this out of the live because we're no longer talking about. Matter of fact, I should wrap this up so you have something to do. Yeah. That's all I have to say about the Karen Reed trial for a recap of days 1 through 9. We are going to be moving on to segment Family Law After Dark in a couple minutes here. But for all the rest of you guys are in the, Jules is talking about cinnamon whiskey. Lulu talks about, in my 20s, I got very sick on Fireball. Yuck. Fireball. Is that the same as what we were talking about?
That's the little liquid with the yellow stamp.
Yeah. Puts hair on your chest. Not Fireball. That's not what puts hair on your chest.
Have you guys ever had like Jaeger bombs?
Every college student has had a Jaeger bomb.
I was gonna talk about Jaeger bombs.
I haven't done those because I'm a discerning adult. That knows better.
A discerning adult.
I almost thought you was saying my name, Julie. Oh, Smirnoff drinks. Isn't that like wine coolers? Smirnoff wine coolers. Is that what it is? Smirnoff.
Smirnoff is
You
Vodka.
it's like vodka.
Oh, it is?
There's apple, green apple taste. There's Malibu. I think that's Malibu or Miami.
If I get the slightest, oh, that's what you said. Jules is with you. Lulu says, I'm more of a Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark is not good in the win. If you're in a Maker's Mark, you got to listen. You got to make the transition. We got to get you on some real whiskey. Maker's Mark, I would put a class below probably Jack Daniels. And I don't drink Jack Daniels for any reason other than to like mix a drink. It's like mixing alcohol. If I'm going to make like a, I don't know, like a whiskey sour or something like that. But if you're going to do Maker's Mark, then you're not going to go wrong with Woodford Reserve. It's way smoother. It's a little bit sweeter. It's got these vanilla notes in it. It's delicious. I wonder if I'm going to get demonetized for talking about liquor.
That's what I was going to ask you.
No, I think you should be fine.
Beat boxes. I got to see these beat boxes.
Everybody's talking about them?
Jules talks about, she really is on. She's talking about Karen. I was recapping Karen Reed at some point during this live. If you ask me, it's by design. They got a grumpy ass judge. It's not by design. I mean, listen, judges, they are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really get to pick your judges. There is something called you can make a peremptory challenge
That's
of a
what I was
judge
gonna-
within a certain time frame. I don't know how that works down with the Commonwealth over there in Boston, but you really have no ability to pick who the judge is going to be. They put them in certain departments, whatever.
I think we've had 2 peremptory challenge come into this office.
Well, you
not
see them in
filed
DV
with
case.
us.
I don't know why they do
Exactly,
it because I
yeah.
know the judge they know what this judge is going to say and what evidence they like and what they don't.
But Omar, like, how many times have you seen them being granted?
Well, it's automatic.
No.
If you do a peremptory challenge within a certain time frame, I forget how many days it is.
Okay. During a certain time frame. That
At
is
the very
true.
beginning of the case.
Exactly.
And then they'll just give you a different judge, right?
But like
once you've been in front
the
of the
middle
judge,
at the end?
no,
No.
it has to be the very, very beginning. That's when they do that. Karen is very confident. I think she should. I would be confident. I would be ecstatic if I was Karen. Honestly.
They're doing a very bad job.
Lulu says, thank you to Jules. There's somebody named Farrell. Oh, Farrell Ballerina. How are you? What a name. A Farrell Ballerina. Like, what's that movie? That movie with that lady that pretended to be a wolf? Foster? Jodie Foster? Y'all even know who that is? You guys are children. What am I even talking to you?
About a lady who pretended to be a fox. When you talk to me about ballerinas...
Nell. Nell is the movie. Nell. She literally, I want to say that she won an Academy Award for Best Actor for pretending to be a wolf. Just watch the movie.
Wait, and she was a ballerina?
No, she was not.
Okay. I was like, what?
It just. Just Jules. Can I get that also, Omar? What you looking for, Jules? What is she talking about? What did I say? Who's gonna get what? Did I offer some? What did I say? What was I? She must be talking about the michelada.
Oh.
Lulu doesn't want hair in her
The
chest.
$50 micheladas.
She needs a good one. I know you don't get to pick your judge. I'm just saying because, yeah, I know you knew that, Jules. I was just, for the listening public, and my assistant's the one that brought it up. Miss Pacheco. She's not even Miss Pacheco. What's your name now? It's Cachone?
De
Castro. Cachone. Where did I get that from? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 2-minute break because I think it's time to bring in, let's see how this works on live.
Purple lights?
Oh, this is not going to go over. It's time to bring in some woo. It is time to bring in Purple Haze. All right, I think it's time for some Family Law After Dark. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 2-minute recess, and we're going to return with some Family Law After Dark. And let me just queue up our stuff, and then we will resume with that. Okay. Hey, do we got like a commercial screen or anything? And we are back. So, on this edition of Family Law After Dark, I'm not even sure where to start. Let me just check something real quick on the Tilted Lawyer. All right. All right. So, Melissa, last time you were on Family Law After Dark, it was a couple of weeks ago. Everybody really liked it. That's really why you're here today, to participate in this segment. And it's a pleasure to have you. But here is our first case. So, this lady is 54, has been living separately from her husband for about 5 years. He works in a different state. He visits during the weekends every few months and provides living expenses regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning of her marriage, she was subjected to physical, mental, verbal abuse by the hands of her husband, which stopped a decade ago, only after she threatened to go to the cops, but she never did. She wants to file for divorce because she wishes to cut all ties with him and family. All right. A local advocate painted a very grim picture of divorce, and the family wants to understand what's the best approach to move forward with the divorce proceedings. And at this point, she doesn't have any evidence regarding any affair, but there is a possibility to prove abuse that is over 10 years old. The husband doesn't want a he won't agree to a mutual divorce. I don't know what state this person is in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's a community property state or not. I don't know if it's a no-fault state or not. And so there's very scant evidence that I'm going off of. But if it is a no-fault state, then she doesn't really need his permission. She doesn't have to prove that she's been abused or anything like that. She could just sign up for a divorce if that's what she wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, if you're trying to prove domestic violence that occurred even over 5 years ago, you're not going to get anywhere with that. It's too old. And then she lived with the guy 10 years afterwards. So
They're going to question that. It's going to raise a question.
I think that the issue is she mentions that they're of Indian descent. I think the bigger question is how it's going to affect the family,
Scratch
Middle
that.
Eastern.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted you to
Yeah.
give me a little bit more.
And so, there's other dynamics that have nothing to do with law that she's concerned about. And so this is probably not the best case for us to analyze. But in terms of the legal aspects of it, if she wants to get a divorce. All she has to even in a state that wasn't that was not an at-fault state, all she would have to do is find, number one, talk to whatever state you're in, an attorney over there. But if she can find, and that, you know what, I don't want to talk about those kinds of states. I'm just saying that if she wants a divorce, then file for one. The first step to getting a divorce is filing for a divorce. She doesn't know. If that's her big concern, he's not going to agree to it. In most states, it doesn't matter who agrees to anything. Divorce is not a mutual thing. It's usually somebody wants it, and then the other person has no choice, especially at a no-fault state. To the extent that that's where she is, then she should just file.
This reminds me of something that you're not going to like when I mention it, but anyway, I'm going to do it because I love to see a reaction. It reminds me of Kim Ye's divorce when Kim asked the judge to declare her as a single individual because their divorce had been going on for almost 2 years. And she wanted to be declared a single individual.
Yeah.
And this guy submitted a 42-page declaration as to why she should not be deemed as a single person, and the judge just granted it.
Of course, because it's irrelevant. His 42 pages of bullshit doesn't matter. That's called a bifurcated judgment, which is what she asked for.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's not a whole lot of beef on that scenario, so I'm moving on that case. Let's move on to a different one. So this person wants to know if they are the asshole
I love those kind of scenarios. Go on.
for giving advice to his friend that resulted in him divorcing his wife. I mean, who am I to judge? I don't know.
Elaborate on it.
I don't even
That
know where
sounds
we're
good.
going with this, but let's go for it. All right. So last October, a guy showed up at my friend's house claiming that he was the father of friend's 8-year-old. I feel like this is an old one.
Go on. Somebody showed up at his store saying he's the father of the 8-year-old son, daughter.
Give me 1 second. Well, this is what's going on. Okay, so someone showed up at my friend's house claiming he was the father of friend's 8-year-old and that he got friend's wife pregnant in an affair but ran off and broke contact. Hell broke loose on the guy. First seeing how the wife was acting suspicious, he confronted her where she admitted to the cheating but claimed the child was my friend's. I don't know if we've done this one or not, but it feels like I've had a case like this before. Friend got a paternity test done, found out he's not the father. He was hurt and depressed. He left his house and stayed at a room away to think about the situation. His wife reached out to all our common friends and they all asked him to forgive the wife and move on. Friend was feeling complicated. His thoughts kept revolving around the 8-year-old. The divorce law in my area says that infidelity is grounds for divorce, but it is the father's responsibility to make sure his kids are secure financially. I don't know what state these people are in. But if the father can prove that the wife committed paternity fraud, he gets out easy. Any lawyer can take and win this case. I don't think there's really anything to win here, buddy. But due to his conflicting feelings, he had a massive breakdown. The wife and child also showed up to his place and caused a scene, asking for forgiveness and for daddy to come back. Gosh, that sucks. That's kind of heartbreaking.
Yes, it
Kid is 8?
8. It's not that young, but also not that old.
I usually stayed and listened to what he was feeling and saying, not giving any input, try to avoid answering or adding my answer in any way, and said there was no right answers. What could I do? He kept on pressing me for a more direct answer, seeing how desperate he was for an answer. I told him that I would leave my wife in such a... Okay, are you the asshole for offering solicited advice? No. But who gives a shit about that? I mean, just legally, look, the guy can get a divorce if he wants to. I guess my immediate attention is from the perspective of the 8-year-old who has a dad that she thought.
It's a she?
I think that she said that it was a daughter. Did I miss that?
Oh my God.
Well, daughter or son, doesn't matter. You have a kid that's 8 years old that was growing up being raised by what she or he thought was their father, and turns out mom cheated. Paternity test confirms, and well, now he is not the father. What do you even do? What recourse do you have? I don't know. What would you do? Okay, I mean, it's hard to ask you hey, Dominic.
Exactly.
What do you do in a case where you are raising an 8-year-old that you think is yours, and you come to find out 8 years later that it's not. It's the milkman's.
That one's tough, dude. Honestly, like after 8 years, it's kind of really like yours because you raised it from birth. So I don't know. Honestly, it's pretty hard.
Oh, it's so weird. I just had like a dream about this last night. The universe is a strange place. I don't know. If you invest 8 years in a child, it's difficult to say, well, you ain't mine. So lots of luck to you, buddy. But then again, there's fathers out there that, 100% confidence in the biological strength of that bond is well, lots of luck to you anyway. I don't give a shit about the father or the mom in this case. My heart breaks for the child. And I have this to say. I mean, I have some very vile things to say to women with respect to this scenario. I don't feel like there's any scenario where a female would not be 100% confident that the child is their partner's. I just don't think that there's any scenario. Like, if you know that there's some hanky-panky going on, there's some bullshit going on, you're running around on your old man, and there's even a modicum of a chance that the child does not belong to your boyfriends or your husbands, and you go through with the marriage, and you don't take appropriate steps to make sure that we figure out what the family structure is going to be, there is a special ring of hell devoted strictly to you. What do you think about that, Melissa?
You're 100% true.
This is all on the mom.
I don't know. I'm gonna sound like a bitch at this point, and they're all gonna hate me and paint me as a pygmy girl and whatever the hell you want to call it, because that's
Pygmy?
like,
Pygmy?
Yeah, that's like a new. You know what I'm talking about, right? That's like a new label that they're using now.
Pygmy.
A pygmy girl.
Oh, PIC.
Yeah, PICK.
Okay.
Pygmy girl.
Pygmy. Okay.
Yeah. But this falls 100% on the mom. I am so freaking sorry, but it does. What Omar said, he made a very valid point. If you are messing around with somebody else and you are not 100% sure that the father of your child is the father of your child, then you are a piece of crap. If you keep going on with the marriage and make somebody believe that that's his son.
Hey, look, I'm all
daughter.
for women's rights and women's liberation and all of that. And
No,
sure,
me too,
right to choose,
100%
but,
sure.
hey, you got a responsibility to, at the very least, make sure that everybody's on the up and up with who belongs to who. Even if that means, look, I would not be mad at this lady if she, in secret, tried to get a DNA test to confirm certain things.
Me neither. She's on her right to do it. And
Just
she wants to make things right.
so that you don't run into a situation like I was reading about this judge who's like now in his 70s or 80s. He's going to his family is going through these DNA tests, blood tests, to figure out if they are compatible to donate a kidney to his ailing wife.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of that, his 40-year-old son takes a test and finds out that, hey, you were not the father of this 40-year-old. 40 years of your life gone. And then the judge I don't know if you probably have seen the TikTok. The judge is like, I just thought the guy was an idiot. I mean, I had no idea. Now it makes perfect sense. I just thought he was, whatever. I was at my wit's end.
We just got
Supporting this guy for 40 years. And
somebody called last week actually, talking about they wanted to petition their son, and they were an American citizen. And I asked him because he wanted his wife, who was the stepmom of the child, to do it. And I was like, do you have a citizenship? He's like, yeah, I've been an American citizen for 40 years. I was like, then why don't you do it? He's like, oh, my son is 19. I was like, okay. So about 2 months ago, I needed blood, and he was not compatible. And then when we ran the tests, we figured out that he was not my biological son. And then when I confronted his mom, who's back in our country, she had to let the truth know that at the same time that she was with me, she was dicking around with somebody else. She doesn't know where the hell that person is, and boom. And she just thought that this was his son, and that's it. He found out that way.
I don't know, man. I honestly don't give a shit about this case. I can't get over the fact that this kid is now. Imagine you're 8 years old. You got dad, and all. I mean, honestly,
and all of a sudden,
probably the kid is going to be fine. Probably lots of kids go through that. They're married, they're products of divorce or whatever, and all of a sudden, mom wants to take the child away from dad and move far away. And we've seen cases like that where mom there's no reason for it. She's fallen out of love with this guy. She doesn't want him to be a part of when she met somebody new. She wants him to be the dad now. So she does everything she can to create a barrier between father and child because she wants to dictate this new life and cut dad completely out. We've seen cases like that where women do those kinds of things. And, oftentimes in these cases, I'm very much the advice that we give on this show. Most of the people what's the demographics of the people listening to the show? It's like 80 to 20 in favor of women for whatever reason. But of all of the cases, most of them are from the female perspective. But I'm just looking at this case and putting in this scenario where a mother is actively trying to sabotage a child's childhood and replace father unilaterally, just because it fits her narrative best. And, you know, and all the while, this child is probably being told, oh, I wish you could see your dad, but he has, you know, he doesn't have any time for you.
He's busy. He's somewhere else. Blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
if he really cared about us, he'd be here. I guess he's got something better to do. And then they start poisoning the child's
They
mind
start
with this
putting
kind of
things
stuff.
in the children's heads.
And all the while, you have dad over here fighting tooth and nail just to get a path to his children.
I remember very vividly we had a case like that.
I think we're thinking about the same case.
Yes, we are. It was horrible because it took me 3 hours to put together a binder of a lot of exhibits.
Yeah, it's
I
that
was
case.
crying the entire time.
God was just a blue-collar, hard-working guy just trying to find a way to get back to his children. We had a whole binder of stuff about all the good stuff because she's trying to tell the judge that daughter doesn't want to go with him. She thinks all
Because
this and
their
that or whatever.
relationship never existed. Something like that. He's like, he's an absent father, and then
So what do you mean it never existed? Look at all of these pictures for the last
Binder.
4 years. Yeah.
Photoshop. I was like,
The energy that man had to put in just to even prove the fact, no, I'm not an absentee father. I've been trying to get to her for 6 months. She literally just moved to a different county miles away and is not giving me access to her and making up stuff. And we had to litigate just the energy that it took to litigate that, the expense it took to litigate that. It's, I don't know, man. What do you do with people like that? There are women like that are out there. They're
Yes, there
literally
and
evil
their
women.
fathers like that as well. But
Sure.
unfortunately, I'm going to have to say this. Based on my experience, vast majority of cases I've seen in this are women. Unfortunately. I hate to say it, but it's true.
No, I'll say it. It's like 95% of the time when that is the scenario, it's from a woman's
It's
perspective.
from a woman.
For whatever reason, women believe that they get to be the gatekeepers to access to the children, and they behave accordingly.
Oh my God. Let's just move on. I just remember that.
Let's move on to another one. Before I get canceled.
Oh, that's another thing. We can get canceled. Forgot about that.
All right. So this person is 44 kids. I'm miserable being married. Guys who've been there and pulled the trigger. Well, what advice do you have for me? Says, this is a familiar situation, I'm sure. Were it not for the kids, I'd have left years ago. Oh, you're such a saint. You're such a trooper, aren't you? I think this guy deserves a gold star. Let's give him a medal.
What did he say? 44?
He wants to be given
Kiss
credit
miserable?
about how he's stayed in this miserable marriage for the sake of the children.
Ay, qué bonito.
No, I don't know. Maybe it's the whiskey talking, but I just, I think this guy's full of shit already. I'm one sentence in. Were it not for the kids I'd have left years ago, she gives me no affection, constantly nags, spends way too much money, and yells at me over the stupidest shit. I get zero time for myself or freedom to pursue hobbies. There's absolutely no reason for me to stay in the marriage except for the kids who are under 10. What should he do?
Duermen juntos, pero no se tocan tan bien.
You're going to have to translate. Not
I'm not
everybody.
gonna say. I'm not gonna. I know. I said it in Spanish because I think a lot of people are not gonna understand. But that's it. I'm
Hey.
just saying, like, oh, we're together for the kids. Blah 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 blah. I've heard that story many times before.
Hey, Dominic, what do you say to this guy?
So I've been moderating the stuff I didn't see.
He is 44. He says he's miserable in his marriage. He has how many kids?
He's
2?
like a martyr. He says, "Oh, I'm sacrificing myself."
Yeah,
for
like,
the sake
oh
of
my
kids."
God, feel so sorry for me because I've stayed in this miserable marriage for so long because of my children and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
blah.
well, here's a stereotype. A lot of men.
I've heard that phrase many times.
A lot of men feel like, and they give TikTok. It's such like a toxic place.
It is.
I see all these TikToks about guys saying, "Oh, nobody cares about us or our feelings, and we just have to, we go through all of this stuff and we work hard, and nobody cares about if we're having a bad day and whatnot." And then they want to like all console themselves in like a circle jerk in the middle of a. This is Family Law After Dark. Edit that out, Dominic.
TikTok is the worst place where you can go for advice or like for comfort.
This guy
or
wants to
clouting.
feel sorry for himself. He's like, look, I don't know what she would say to all of that. I just had a case last week. You weren't here for this one. I think you were in Vegas for your birthday.
On Friday?
Yeah, Ileana was on me, and then there was like this. There was this. Okay, I want you to reframe what I just read to you right here about this guy. Hey, she gives me no affection. She constantly nags and spends way too much money and yells at me over stupid shit. I get zero time or freedom for myself or pursue hobbies, and there's no reason for me to stay except for the kids. But this other lady was like, my husband literally doesn't bathe for weeks. He sits there and plays video games all the time. He's completely narcissistic. He gets mad at me for caring for my children. He gets mad because I give them attention, and he says stuff about it. And then we're thinking, he doesn't bathe for 2 weeks. So imagine that was there. And then this is the guy on the other end. She gives me no affection.
That's what I was going to say. That's the other perspective.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't have her perspective, and I don't know if that's the case. He might bathe every day for all I know. Look, if you're 44 and you're a man, you're married, you got kids that are under 10, here's the situation. You can get divorced if you want to. And you will pay child support, and you will pay alimony, and you will have to co-parent with a person that shows you no affection, that nags you over the stupidest shit and all of those things, and you will have to find a way to make peace with yourself and fine. But you're also 44, and I don't know, but I'm 43. You don't look the same as when you were 25. You're older now. So what do you want to do? You want to get divorced, and you want to go and like peruse the internet for some 20-something-year-olds or whatever, because you're looking for affection in all the places that you're not getting it at home. I'm sure there's an aspect of you that is like craving the attention from women that you're not getting for whatever reason. There could be a million different reasons. It could be that his hygiene sucks. It could be just that they've been together for like 20, 25 years, and the perils of having to raise children have sapped the sex drives from both of them altogether. It could be that he's completely stopped trying. Look, I'm also trying
that's
to...
what he meant when he says no affection. Okay, yeah, my mind just clicked on that. I didn't pay attention. I did not pay attention to that. I was paying attention to all the other demographics. Forgot that's very important for men. Yeah.
Look, it sucks for her. I mean, it sucks for him. It probably sucks for her too. You have a decision to make, buddy. You very well can go ahead and get a divorce and deal with all of the things that come with it. Or you can, die on your shield trying to save the marriage on the off chance that it might not just be a communication issue.
It might not be, or it might be.
Maybe.
Okay.
Look, if it's not domestic violence, if it's not like
substance abuse,
somebody is not safe for whatever reason. There's a lot of psychologists out there that will go and say, hey, do you think that you're a better person with or without her? If you're having this feel sorry for yourself attitude, you're going to always say, oh, I'm definitely a better person without her because I feel happier and all of these things. Look, all of that's all well and good. You want to go find yourself? Go find yourself. Matter of fact, you want to take a temporary separation and you just go spend a month up the hill and meditate on life and do things and bang a bunch of 20-something-year-olds or whatever, 30-year-olds, or that if they're going to give you that kind of attention, go for it, buddy. But in 10 years, you're going to wake up and you're going to be 54 years old. And you're not, it's not all downhill from here. You have a lifetime of, you don't have a lifetime to pursue whatever, the one perfect person that you're looking for. I guess that's the question. Are you looking for like a happily ever after, or do you just want to be a single person? You got to be honest with yourself.
I don't think this guy, man, whatever, knows exactly what he wants. I get that feeling from
he hasn't given any indication that he's shooting in a direction. He just says that
he feels miserable. That's it. He's just clouding.
And he's feeling sorry for himself. Look, if he was sitting here in this office, I would just tell him, if you really think if you want to, I just had this conversation. I feel like if you want to get a divorce, you can always get a divorce. If she hasn't filed for divorce, you don't have to. But you got to talk to her. You have to have some communication. I'm not going to be able to help you. You guys got to talk and figure this out. And if it's savable and you want to pull out all the stops to try to salvage something, then go for it. Because divorce is always going to be an option, but there's a threshold for married couples that if they go beyond it, there is no salvaging anything. I don't know if at this if this couple is at that point. But on the off chance that they are not at that point, it's worth it to pursue it, because how long they've been married? He doesn't really say, does he?
No, he doesn't say it.
Let's just assume they've been married for over 10
Well,
years.
he's saying that he has 2 kids under 10.
Yeah, so let's just say
So-
15, 10, 20 years, whatever.
Mhm.
They got married at 25. It's a 20-year relationship. You're never, ever, ever going to find another person, at 44, maybe you will, that you're going to spend. Well, I guess I can't really say that's true. There's plenty of people that have met and found people and married in their
40s.
40s and, lived the rest of their life with that person. It's possible. I guess the cost is it's a lot, man. You're giving up access to your children. And I understand what he means. Oh, I'm staying for the children, because really when men say that, it's not that they're trying to protect the children from whatever, some co-parenting relationship. What they're guarding against is the lack of access to their children, because a married couple that has reached this level where they're just kind of roommates and no affection and constantly nagging and bickering, and they're probably having sex maybe once or twice a year, maybe less. It's hard to resurrect feelings for that person when you've gotten to that point. But let's just assume that's not the case. All I'm saying is anybody could hit the eject button at any time. If he's really concerned about the children and trying to salvage something, then he has to take it upon him and not, come to people like myself to try to say, hey, should I get a divorce or not? The fact that he's even asking that question is cowardly. Because if you think it's time to get a divorce, then just effing do it.
Exactly.
You don't need my permission to get a divorce. Of course.
You can just do it by yourself.
Yeah. The fact that he's asking the question, I have to believe there's some measure of this person that wants to salvage it. And look, go for it, man. Try to salvage it. Go get yourself into counseling. Go and take a vacation. Here's what I would do.
Nobody knows his spouse better than he does.
Except fucking Chad, the coworker, who she's having an emotional affair with. Edit that out, Dominic. She's got 3 people in her phone that knows her better than him.
He doesn't say that.
No, but I know that. As a family law attorney, I know that. And so I'm speculating. It's not fair of me to say that of her. I'm just assuming that if
He's
she...
just making a joke.
Now look, here, it's not a joke. If she's at the point where she's not giving him affection, everything he does irritates her. Every little thing that he says and does irritates her. She's constantly
that's
nagging.
Part of marriage, isn't it?
No.
I mean, not all the time, but you get what I'm saying. Your spouse is going to get to your nerves.
It's a part of a bad marriage.
Your spouse is going to get to your nerves. That's normal.
Yeah, but it does. But usually there's still all the other good stuff in between.
Yes.
If it's nothing
but here's the
but
thing.
the bad.
He's only pointing out the bad things. Maybe there's some good parts that he's leaving out.
Well,
Let's just say it that way. Let's just call it that way.
That's why I'm not telling him right away, just, hey, yeah, definitely go get a divorce. For sure. He needs to man up and try to salvage it. If he wants to be the big hero, then he needs to go be the big hero. If I were him and he wanted to, here's what I would do. If he really wants to fire off the one last salvo, go schedule a 4-week vacation in Italy or something. 1 week, something,
Well, he's not saying where he's at, so let's just say it that way.
Yeah, go someplace.
Go someplace very
with
far
just
away.
you, yourself, and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
With no distractions, no kids.
No, nothing.
And talk shit out. Get to know your 44-year-old wife, because you don't know her anymore. Definitely don't. And she sure as hell doesn't know you. And I guarantee you, she might suspect, but she doesn't know that you feel this way.
Dominic, do you remember the trend of Nate and Cassie?
No.
Where she's like walking and then he walks
Yeah.
you remember that?
Yeah.
This is the exact same thing.
Yep.
Lulu says that she's giving affection to someone. Probably. Jules says he don't got to say it, but to be fair, I was thinking it also. Yeah. I don't know, but I would take her on a 1 week, 2 week vacation, get to know your wife again, man. Fall in love again, if it's possible. And if it doesn't work out, when it's just you two in a exotic place, not even exotic, just a different place,
Secluded place,
a space that is different than the status quo. Then yeah, maybe it's time to call it quits. But give it one more shot. See what happens. That's all I got to say to this guy before I get too rough with him. But all right, let's move on to another one. This guy says, all right.
I would have been much more sweeter.
What would you have said?
No, you already said everything.
All right.
This is a guy asking a question. If it was a woman, it would have been different.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm harsher on men or women. I feel like I don't really pick and choose. I just try to tell it like it is. If he was my brother, that's exactly what I would tell him. Anyway, so I've been seeing this amazing guy for a couple of months. He is a vetted good guy.
Started bad.
Vetted by who? Exactly.
By her friends, I'm sure.
He unfortunately is going through a divorce right now. Things have been going amazing between us, including planning that we are going to do once everything is officially done. Then a few days after a disagreement over something silly, he asked me to give him space to figure things out.
Sweetie.
Regarding his divorce, he originally asked for a couple of days, which turned to almost 2 weeks of no talking. I reached out once and he was very distant. This has been tough because I miss him a lot. I got him a gift because he asked for space to cheer him up and show support. And I let him know about it when he asked for space. I would like to ask to meet this Friday to talk. I also think to ask if his feelings for me have changed. Would that be wise to do?
Sweetie, I'm just going to say it. Sweetie, you're dating a married man. Do I have to say anything else? I'm just going to leave it as it is.
Well, let's just give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
No, I'm not giving anybody the freaking benefit of the doubt, Omar.
My God.
As soon as she said, I'm dating this amazing, I was like, no, this is bad. This is really bad.
Well, let's just assume they're in like a divorce that's been going on for a couple of years and he's living at his own place and they got like custody and visitation orders. So, and the stuff has been filed. Let's just assume that that's the case.
And then she said something and he disappeared for 2 weeks and he's not answering.
Oh, he's trying to ghost her.
Shook her.
Yeah. So
that's how serious it was going with his divorce, that they had so much plans, and then all of a sudden she says something that he's not agreeable with, and then boom, he disappears 2 weeks. Gasps in Spanish. Pretends to be shocked.
After a disagreement over something silly. Yeah. Men don't escalate things like that. If a man escalates anything with a woman, it's a big red flag. I don't want to speak for all. Hey, Dominic, how often do you escalate things?
Not often.
I think the only time my husband/fiance has escalated something with me is when I said something that really, really hurt him, like touched his senses. That was the one and only time, and it was like 3 years ago.
I guess I say there's never been a time with my wife where I'm like, we're gonna sit down and discuss this right now. We need to talk about our relationship. That would never come from me. Men don't escalate things like that. We don't want to have those conversations. It's not because we don't think they're important. It's just that we just have a different way of communicating. But usually when a man escalates something that's like you said, your husband was very hurt by something you said. This guy or this lady says that it was something silly and he escalated it because he's looking for a way out.
Of course.
He's had his fill of you. He had his fun with you and now he's done. And he'd really appreciate it if you leave him alone because he's got like 4 other women on his roster that he needs to explore. Because he's just getting out of a divorce and he's trying to go and discover America. So leave him to his devices. Do not be disillusioned thinking that there's any kind of a future between you and him because very likely there isn't. If you want to get trapped into that, he's just not having it. You're going to get ghosted pretty soon.
Piece of advice, please don't date a man that says that he's getting divorced, but it's taking so long. Please don't.
Well, I'll tell you what, if the guy's telling you that he needs space, it's space to do other women. That's what it is. I'm just calling it what it is. That's what it is.
I have to side on you on that.
Well, that's the only reason he would need space.
Exactly.
Just hey, just leave me alone already. You know what? Do you want some Uber money? That's where he's going with it. He's not interested. Plus, he's just getting out of a relationship. Why would you want to get into? Why would you assume that any guy that's going through a divorce just wants to get? Oh yeah, I'm definitely just going to get remarried right now.
Mistresses are overstepping.
Give him years to recover and get over it. And, you know, maybe in 4 or 5 years, maybe then he'll be ready to go into a serious relationship. But right now, it looks like he's trying to sow his royal oats. To quote Coming to America. You guys probably don't even know what that movie is, huh?
This sounds like a 20-year-old something dating a 40-year-old something. That's the perception I'm getting.
No, because when I was a divorcee, when I was like 29, well, I was in law school, the women that I were dating were not 20-something-year-olds. They were my age, or like in their 30s. I dated some women in their 40s. I dated some in their 20s. But they were all very similar in that they wanted to like
settle down,
go to relationship level. And like, shit, I just got out of a relationship. I'm just got divorced.
Parentheses. I just want you to know that that's the exact same reaction I get when I show him like a situation where it's so traumatic. He's like, shit, not now.
Just let the guy go, man. You be best moving on.
Yes.
Do not invest anything into this guy. He's probably going to ghost you soon, so you should act accordingly.
He already ghosted her.
Well, I don't know if he did.
He basically did.
He tried to, just in a nice way. But whatever. That's all I got to say to this person. Let's move on. Okay. So this person was asking me, if you're on the other side of divorce.
What does that mean?
If you've been divorced before and you're happy and stable, what advice would you give newbies?
Oh, that's an Omar answer, not a me answer, because I haven't been married.
Why's it got to be an Omar answer?
I'm not married, Omar.
You're about to be?
Yes, but I haven't been divorced. You have. You're on the other side of the spectrum.
What a dick.
¿Qué quiere que te diga? It's the truth.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this person.
O sea.
I'm not offended. I'm just.
I know. I'm kidding.
With you. So there's no definitive timeline. I'm just curious what those of you on here have been post-divorce for several years, and if you found a new satisfying relationship, managed to co-parent. The co-parent.
You see, it is a no more answer.
All right. What is the best advice you can give to those of us who are still grappling with this? All right, so the co-parenting thing, if you got a kid, that sucks. You have to fight for your kids. You have to. If you don't have a reasonable co-parent to work with, and they're trying to gatekeep you from your child, you can't let that stand. You got to fight tooth and nail for your child if it's important to you. And if it's not, then don't worry about it. That will bear itself out by the merits of your actions, and that's all I really have to say on that issue. But the best co-parenting plans are those where you speak the least amount possible to your ex, to your co-parent. There's no reason to have your ex in your life at all whatsoever if
Please
you're divorced.
pay attention to what he just said.
You don't
Great
need
advice.
to keep up with what's going on in their life. You don't have to know their financial situation. You got to know their living situation. You definitely don't need to know who they're dating. Who gives a shit? You ain't going to be telling them all the people that you're dating. It's just not important. So cancel that part of it out. Matter of fact, it should get to the point where you speak only about your child in 1 or 2 word sentences.
Well, that's the logical thing to do.
Well, it's the ideal thing to do. If you could accomplish that and maintain as much contact with your child as possible, then great, you're way ahead of the game. So let's talk about the dating aspect of it. You have to, depending on your age, I'm just going to assume he's like probably in his 30s or so. You have to learn how to date without purpose. The mistake that so many young people make, Dominic, you should listen up. Melissa, you're already expired. You're already betrothed.
Haven't I been expired for like 3 years?
No, you just turned 30.
I thought the cutout age was 27.
Oh, no, it's half the age of the man plus 7,
Of who men?
according to the Nation of Islam.
I was just going to ask, according to American Pie or what?
No, I joke with my wife that when I met her, she was 29. And she was like
About to expire.
a couple of months from her 30th birthday. It's like, oh, you're about to expire, huh? Ah, well, it's still good past the expiration date, I guess. Just messing.
This just reminded me of the take the number and multiply it by 3, take the number and divide it by 3.
And what's the result?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, what are you talking
In
about?
American Pie 2, my God, I don't remember the names of these people. But anyway, they came back from college, and Kevin and Vicky, they used to date in high school, but they broke up because they went to different colleges.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
Exactly. And when they spoke about, I don't know why the conversation came over, but somebody asked somebody how many people they had slept with, and then Vicky said 3, and then he said 3 as well. And then when they went to their like mutual friends group, they were like, she said 3? No, you take that number and then you multiply it by 3. That's the actual number.
No, I really believe that to be true.
And then when she went to her friends, it's like, no, you take that number and then you divide it by 3. That's the actual answer.
Yeah, men overstate, women understate. It's a thing.
So that equation.
Hey, Dominic,
just
you're best
reminded
off.
me that.
Honestly, just don't ask a woman that question. Who gives a shit, man? It's not important. Just you should hope that the person you settle down with is experienced enough to not have any more curiosity. That's really what you're going
That's
for.
a good advice.
It's the same for a man. You don't want a man that is insecure because he's not had a lot of luck with women.
Mm-hmm.
You want a guy that's been around the block and has experienced all of that and got out of his system. I feel like the same is true for a woman. I wouldn't want a woman that's like, oh, you're the only one I've ever been with. And it's like, well, that's a lot of pressure for one. And for two, the curiosity that's going to come from being married to that person after 10, 15, 20, 25 years is going to be a lot to deal with. And you've seen in this, when do most people get divorced? After 15, 20, 25 years, they usually meet when they're like 20, in their lower 20s, and then they're in their 40s, and it's like midlife crisis, and it's like, I'm tired, the children are grown, I'm done, I'm out, I want to go experience life, and then they start exploring with other men, and we usually have the guy coming back, because I don't know, she cheated on me with all these people. It's like 90% of our cases. Maybe that's overstated, maybe 70%, but it happens a lot. You don't want somebody that's inexperienced. I'm getting off the point. The point is, for this guy, you have to learn how to date without purpose. The fallacy of dating as a single person is you're dating with the explicit purpose of finding your happily ever after. Happily ever after does not exist. It is not a place. It is not an achievement. It is not like this grand place where you get and everything is going to be peaches and cream. You're like in heaven because you're, Cinderella on the castle. No, you're still going to have bills to pay, children to raise. The universe is still going to impose its will upon you. You're still going to have depression, medical issues.
Anxiety.
The grass is greener, anxieties, insecurities. Everything is going to happen. You're looking for somebody that makes your life better. You are who you are. There's no changing who you are or what you are. Come to terms with it, acknowledge it, and embrace it. And don't compromise it. If you want somebody to say, oh, that's all well and good, I date you, but you have to, you have to be just a little more assertive. Get the F out of here, assertive. How about, no, I don't. How about I am what I am? There's no changing who you're going to be. You don't compromise what you're going to be or who you're going to be for a person because you think that it's going to lead to this happily ever after. More often than not, it's going to become a situation where you're unequally yoked with your partner, and inevitably it's going to blow up again. And there's no pressure. You've already been down the road to divorce and survived. And so the illusion should be shattered that Disney and all of these movies, these enchanted stories where you have a prince and a princess and a castle, where you have the big whatever, that image is not real. And we teach our children that, and I feel like we set them up for failure. The correct answer to that question for anybody that's single is to learn how to date without purpose. And in the course of doing that, you'll define a purpose. And if it's with the right person where you guys fill in each other's gaps, you could turn that into something beautiful. But if you try to force it, you're going to end up settling. And when you settle, you're doomed to failure anyway.
Almost ends up bad all the time.
So that's all I got to say to that guy. Hey, how long have we been going?
A little over 2.5 hours.
Oh, Jules says, talking about American Pie. Lulu says, sometimes I feel like I should be single. I don't know, man. Lots of people say that they feel like they should be single. Single is a double-edged sword. There's a lot of
I do have a friend who, and it's a male friend. I do have a friend who he's like, oh, I see my entire life being single. Like, I already know I'd envision it. He's happy with it.
Well, good for him. And you know what? That's how I saw myself when I got divorced. I don't ever have to. I'm going to be single the rest of my life. And then I found one because I dated without purpose, and it worked out. But when you say that you should be single when you're a married person, or if you're attached, or even if you're not, you think that's not a bad thing. If you're saying that as a married person, I don't know. There's a lot going on in between lines with that. But the illusion of being single is simply this. All of this freedom to go out and explore and do all the things that you want. But then you start indulging in that, and then it becomes very stale itself. And then I find that most of the people that do that kind of thing, that indulge their single tendencies, desires, wishes, or whatever, get tired of it very quickly. It's an illusion like everything else. It's the lake in the desert that you see on the horizon, the mirage, and you get there and it's just a bunch of dust and sand. It expires very quickly, and your energy and appetite for it extinguish very quickly. And ultimately, if you can find a person that you can navigate the universe and overcome the universe trying to impose its will upon you, then you'll live a longer life, and the science bears that out. I think that a successful marriage, I don't know what the numbers are, but it adds years to your life. Single people usually live a very loud and violent, eventful life, and they flame out pretty dramatically. But I'll leave that to where it belongs. Let's move on. Let's do one more. One more. How long have we been going for?
He said a little over 2 hours and a half.
Yeah.
But what's the exact time?
I want to say 2 hours and like 35 minutes.
Yikes. Oh, well, we had like breaks in between.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From the female, so we did one from the male perspective. Let's do one from the female. All right, so I'm 30. And honestly, I want to divorce my husband.
Oh my God.
We've been at odds for a while. Anger, resentment, aggressive arguments, but we have a son who's about to turn 1, and he is truly the only reason, all right? Almost exactly like the other one, right? 1 year old, and he is truly the only reason I've stayed so long. I know he only wants to stay married off of principle and pride, and the fact that his family doesn't believe in divorce. He gives a shit about your family. But he also isn't willing to change to make effort either.
This is funny because I just received a judgment from one of our clients. And of course, as I received it, the other party received it. And then she started posting everywhere, God doesn't believe in divorce, blah, 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 blah.
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, people think what they want. So he makes me feel like shit constantly, but he gets along with my family. We have a routine, our son, etc. I just feel scared to leave. But the thought of living my life forever with this man makes me want to drink every day to escape. Well, yeah.
Okay, that's bad.
What-
That's very bad.
I'll let you tackle this one, Melissa. What do you think?
Me?
Hmm.
Okay, she's 30. I'm 30. So same age. She has a 1-year-old, almost a 1-year-old. I did have a friend in the same situation. She was not 30. She was 27 or 28 back then. I'm not 100% sure. She was around my age. And actually, they never got married, but she was in that same like comfort zone where she was like, oh, he gets along with my family. I don't know if I should leave him or not, yada, 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 because my family doesn't believe in separation and stuff like that. She actually, when she was pregnant, tried to separate from him, and her family coerced her on not doing it, saying that she could be a bad mom because she was putting her child in a destroyed home, because their parents were going to be separated by the time the baby was born. And I mean, she said aggression. She said a lot of anger issues. And she also said that the thought of remaining with this man forever made her drink almost every single day. If just the thought of being with somebody makes you want to abuse a substance, that's a bad thing. And let's not say, she said alcohol, okay? Some people do drugs. Some people do sugar. Some people just have gula. I don't know if that's the way you say it in English, but you just eat for eating. Some people do other things. Some people do reckless driving. Like there's a lot of bad things going on. So, I mean, I would suggest you're in a good age. You do have a 1-year-old. That's fine. Like nobody's going to die for being a single mom. So just bear with on that. So if really, really you believe that this person just is going to drive you insane up to the point where you're just going to have to like cope with something else, you should really think about leaving.
Well, here's what I got to say. Just like the other guy, she wants everybody to know that she's martyred herself up to this point. You got a 1-year-old kid. There's a lot going on when you have a 1-year-old child. There's postpartum depression. There's the
Oh, she said about to turn 1. Yeah, we don't know exactly.
the burden of having to care for a toddler. It's just it's strikingly difficult. If you're a new parent raising a baby for the first time, you have this little person that is dependent on you 24 hours a day. And before that, you guys were it was just the two of you. Now you got
Omar,
this little person.
She's not such of a martyr as the other one because the other one's asking for advice. She's like, I want to do it. She's 100% true.
Well,
like 100% convinced.
she specifically asked for advice. She says, do you have any advice? She specifically asked.
But the other one was not sure. This one is.
Well, I don't
she
think
sounds more sure.
Well, let's just assume that she's not sure.
Okay, let's assume that she's not.
Okay. So she wants to. I would just say, don't do it when your child is 1, because a lot changes within a couple of years. I know the point of the marriage that she's going through. It's the point where there's like sticker shock. You just had a kid. Her body has been ravaged by a pregnancy. It's probably still not recovered.
And hormones.
She probably has insecurity issues that have led to lack of intimacy issues that have led to lots of arguments because of postpartum depression. She's sleep deprived. She doesn't have any time to herself. She has no alone time. She's constantly having to deal with taking care of the needs of a child, meaning she's neglecting her own needs, let alone her husband's needs. And her husband, there's not really any indication of how he's taking it, but they've had a lot of aggressive arguments. He's going through something similar. Your body has changed. It's probably not all that important to him. But he's dealing with a lack of intimacy. He's probably also similarly sleep deprived. He cares enough about the child to want to be a part of its life.
Your husband not caring about your body changes, because I've seen this situation.
Well, yeah, it happens, but most husbands that genuinely love their wives don't give a shit.
Generally, exactly, but I've seen it.
But she hasn't. I feel like if that was a thing, she would have just come out and said it, because
she would have figured it out by now.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that the guy is like, oh yeah, you just had a kid. Of course you're gonna look a little bit different, feel a little bit different. It's just what I signed up for. And so I have to assume that he's invested in this child because of what she said. She said that we're both kind of just in it for the child. It's like that one song, Gladys Knight. Neither one of us wants to be the first to say goodbye. You don't know anything about that song. I bet you don't know anything about it either, huh, Dominic?
Nope.
Well, yeah, they're both going through something, man. Now is not the time to get a divorce. What, you're going to get a divorce, custody and visitation battle, divorce proceedings, child support. You're going to be single with a 1-year-old.
I don't know. I'm still thinking about the part of, like, it makes me want to drink every single time.
Well, that may or may not have anything to do with this guy. It could have, look, let's just take him out of the equation. And now she's single mom with an infant under 1 year old. And she's having to care for this child and be responsible for this child 24 hours a day. No alone time. Waking up every hour and a half to 2 hours. Constantly running on 4 and 5 hours of sleep. Body changing. Postpartum depression. All of this stuff. You don't need a man to make you drink when you're going through all of those things. You understand? And so you add him to the equation, and he's either a byproduct of the depression, or he is just another variable adding to it. He might be innocent altogether. They're just both on each other's nerves, and it probably has very little to do with them directly, because if you took the child out of the equation, I'm guessing they would probably be better off, at least in terms of their relationship. They're having to cope with this new variable, and difficult. And so I can't even say for sure that he is the source of her wanting to drink every day. I've spoken to many people that have gone through very similar things. And then specifically around this age, and we have a case right now where somebody literally had this, and then they are going through the divorce, and 4 months later, oh, I'm pregnant with another one, and now I need custody orders for that one. And it's like, oh my God. That's not anything to do with the guy. That's a lot of other stuff that has
There's
to do
other
with
things going on.
other things.
Mhm.
And so I cannot say, look, anybody wants to get divorced, they can. I'm just saying now is probably not the time. Let things settle a little bit. Wait until the kid's maybe 3 or 4 when it starts getting a little bit easier. The kid's potty trained, sleeps through the night, and things start to lighten up on the relationship. And if it's still that way, then, fine. But for right now, get yourselves into some kind of therapy and start communicating what you guys are going through. If that doesn't work, you can always get a divorce. But right now is not the time to start diagnosing the source of depression, because there's a million different things to be depressed about in her life. And I'm just going to leave her like that. Wait. Just wait. Just a little bit. Hey, Dominic said something. Oh, Lulu said, would you say because of having all the dating apps or social media, is that kind of what makes it hard? Dominic said, yes, dating apps and or social media leads to lots of meaningless meetup dates. But hey, Dominic, that's nothing new, man. Before Tinder, you just went up and talked to people.
Match.com.
You know what I used to do when I was 17, 18-year-old? I saw a pretty girl, I would go and talk to her. That's the way you just used to do it. You had to. There was no dating apps.
There was no intermediate. You just had to.
No, man, you had to work up the courage and build up the social skills and just, hey, that girl's pretty. Let me go talk to her. And then you would. And then it's, hey, all my friends used to give me props wow, I'm going to go talk to anybody. I don't give a shit, man. Tell me no, man. But you have to go through that process. It's part of developing who you're going to be as a person, as a man. Dating apps, all they do is they facilitate the meetups faster, I'd imagine. But it's no different. You still have to, I don't know. Ultimately, if you're going to have a meaningful relationship with anybody, the dating apps go out of the equation, and you guys have to learn how to communicate with each other one-on-one. Lulu says, you are wise beyond your years, Dominic. What did you say that was so wise?
What did you say?
Lots of meaningless meetups, and I've found that it's not worth it to force a relationship, but rather let it happen organically. Oh, totally.
That's my experience.
It belongs on a fortune cookie. No, hey man, whether you meet on a dating app or not, communication and learning how to communicate with the person is really important. So it plays a role. I think it just expedites everything. It's definitely not how it used to be in the 90s. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I have to say to that lady. Do you have any closing words, Melissa, for this person?
No.
All
I
right.
like your advice.
I think that we're going to stop right there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the Tilted Lawyer podcast. We're going to be signing off for now. Next week, maybe we'll check in on the Chad Daybell. Maybe we'll start recapping or putting together what's going on with the Karen Reed case in another week or so. I'm kind of curious about where prosecution is going with their case, because right now I feel like they're just not scoring. We'll see. If you guys want me to cover another case, let me know in the comments. Other than that, unless you got anything to say to anybody else?
No.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
Will see. I didn't do the intro. Pow. That's all right. Dominic will put that in. Hey guys, it's been fun, but we got to go. It's 2:00 and it's Friday.